There is a basement under the city, and the things in it are not extinct. That is the show. That is the entire pitch of Sanctuary in one line, and it is going to take 4 seasons and 59 episodes to unpack what the line actually means. There is a beautiful Victorian woman who runs the basement. There is a mountain in the lobby that brings the tea. There is a teenage girl in the upstairs apartment who carries more guns than the British Army. There is a blue mermaid in a tank, and a fairy in a jar, and a fire creature behind glass, and an invisible woman in the rafters. There are 3 crypts buried in a Scottish field that have been waiting for someone to find them since the year 800. There is a small boy with a snake-shaped second arm growing out of his shoulder. There is also, downstairs, locked behind reinforced glass, an electric magnetic shield, and a security protocol nobody at the lobby has ever asked the woman in charge about, the thing that killed an FBI profiler's mother when he was 8 years old. The FBI profiler is going to walk into this building in episode 1. He is going to be hit by a car in the rain and wake up on a gurney in the hospital with a business card in his pocket. He is going to be told that the world he thought he understood, the criminals he profiled, the cases he closed, the entire textbook of human behavior he built his career on was the cover story. The basement is not the cover story. The basement is what is true. This is Sanctuary, SYFY Network, 2008 to 2011, 4 seasons, 59 episodes. Created by Damian Kindler, fronted by Amanda Tapping, fresh off 10 years of Stargate SG-1, financed half by Canada and half by Faith. The show was originally 8 web episodes shot on green screen against a near-empty stage. It got picked up to series. It built one of the most expensive cable show pipelines on the continent, mostly digital, mostly Vancouver, with prosthetics so good the network used to send them to Comic-Con as standalone exhibits. The show had 150 years of mythology, 4 functioning sanctuary networks, a hollow earth, a city under a city, an underground civilization with a queen, a vampire scientist who claims he invented electricity, a Jack the Ripper who was a fiancé, a Sherlock Holmes who was not a sidekick, and an immortal British scientist who has been carrying the weight of every wrong choice she ever made for almost 2 centuries. 5 Victorian scientists at Oxford, in a small lab, in 1885, drank a vial of blood from an extinct species and changed what their bodies were. One of them invented the rest of the show. She is in the basement now. She is 157 years old. Her name is Helen Magnus. This is her story. It is also the story of the man she recruited in episode 1, the daughter she raised alone, the Sasquatch she calls Bigfoot, the engineer she took in as a frightened child, the team she built around herself one survivor at a time, and the 4 people who took the same vial of blood she did, in the same lab, in the same year, and have been arguing with her about it ever since. Sci-fi cryptid procedural with Stargate tier mythology, anchored by 150 years of Victorian friendships that just will not die. That is the genre on the tin. The show ran on the Sci-Fi Network from October 2008 to December 2011. It was created by Damian Kindler, an executive who had been writing for the back half of Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis. The pilot was originally an 8-episode web series shot almost entirely on green screen. The web series got picked up to a full television series. The television series ran for 59 episodes across 4 seasons, then got canceled. There was supposed to be a season 5. There was not. What was on screen was Amanda Tapping, who had been the audience's introduction to military science fiction for 10 years on Stargate SG-1, walking out of one franchise into another. She brought half her audience with her. The other half came for the cryptids. The crew was Vancouver-based. The visual effects pipeline was, for its budget tier, the most ambitious thing on basic cable. The show invented camera and post-production techniques that other sci-fi productions used for the next decade. What was not on screen until the very end was the answer to the central question of the show. Who has Helen Magnus actually been talking to all this time in the basement under the city? Who has she been carrying with her? Who has she been losing? The answer is the team. The team is the basement. Let's go. Old City. 2 beat cops named Russo and Birch kick in an apartment door on a domestic call. They find a dead body under a bed and a small, frightened boy hiding behind it. The boy is named Alexei. The boy has a second arm growing out of his shoulder. The second arm is not really an arm. It is a snake. The snake darts out and stabs Russo through the head before he can finish his radio call. Birch backs against the wall in horror. Alexei runs. Will Zimmerman is having dinner across town. He is a forensic psychiatrist. He notices in the way the chef has plated tasted his food that the chef is not the regular chef. He says it out loud to the waitress. The waitress is impressed. He has done this his entire life. He notices things. The cell phone rings. He goes to work. He arrives at the apartment building over the snide objections of Detective Joe Kavanaugh, who has been profiling the case as a domestic homicide and does not appreciate the Fed reading the room over his shoulder. Will reads the apartment in 12 seconds. Will reads the suspect in custody in another 10 and rules him out. Will sees, on a perimeter ledge above the alley, a small boy walking. He gives chase. A motorcycle blows past him. A car clips him. He blacks out. He wakes up on a hospital gurney. The car was driven by a Sasquatch. The motorcycle was driven by a teenage girl named Ashley. The car's passenger was a tall woman with a British accent who apologized for the accident and walked off into the rain. When Will steps outside the hospital in the rain hours later, the woman is waiting. She hands him a small business card in person and walks off. The card says Sanctuary. The card has a phone number. That is the entire card. The woman is Dr. Helen Magnus. Magnus has been watching Will Zimmerman for years. Magnus knows things about him she should not know. Magnus, in the rain outside his apartment, makes him an offer. Will declines. Will goes home. Will finds his ex-girlfriend collecting her stuff and reminding him on the way out that he is impossible to live with. Will stares at the business card. Will calls. The Sanctuary is a Victorian fortress on the edge of Old City, surrounded by an invisible electric magnetic shield, accessed through an iron gate the size of a city block. Bigfoot drives Will up to the front door. Magnus walks him into the foyer. They take an elevator down. The elevator opens onto a level the city has no record of, a laboratory the size of an aircraft hangar. Behind glass, on every wall, behind reinforced shielding, in tanks, in cages, in ecosystems that mimic 5 different climates: a fairy, a mermaid, a fire creature, a two-faced man, a scaled humanoid, a small girl named Sally who can talk to people through glass. The Sanctuary, Magnus tells Will, has been running on this property since 1875. She protects creatures the textbook calls extinct, mythical, or impossible. She calls them abnormals. The world calls them monsters when the world bothers to look. The job offer is permanent. The job offer comes with a basement. Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, a man teleports out of thin air and tries to walk through Magnus's front door. The shield repels him. He stands there in the rain, in a long black coat, with a small cane and a calm, devastated face, and disappears. Ashley, Magnus's daughter, has been chasing the snake-armed boy through the subway. Will and Magnus join her. They corner Alexei in a maintenance crate. The boy panics. The snake strikes. Ashley shoves Will out of its path and takes the hit on her shoulder. Magnus drops the boy with a tranquilizer. Alexei collapses. Ashley needs stitches. Will is told, on the way back upstairs, that the teenage girl who just took a venomous shoulder strike to save his life is Magnus's daughter. The teenage girl looks 12 years younger than the woman who is, openly, her mother. Will does not ask. Will is going to ask eventually. The snake-armed boy is taken to a holding cell. Magnus introduces Will to his job. The audience is introduced to the show. Will sits across from Alexei in the holding cell. Alexei does not speak English. Will does not need him to. Will talks the boy down by giving him language for what the boy is feeling. Fear, the need to feel safe, the universal condition of being a frightened child with a body the world cannot accept. The snake stops striking. Magnus, watching from the observation deck above, calls the moment magnificent. The man at the gate from the night before is named John Druitt. Druitt teleports. Druitt has been hunting Helen Magnus for over 100 years. The night before, while Will was being recruited, Druitt killed a sex worker in an alley near a warehouse. Magnus, on a security camera Henry Foss pulls for her, recognizes him immediately. Druitt was, Magnus quietly tells Will later, her first patient. Druitt was, Magnus does not say out loud yet, also her fiancé. Ashley sneaks out of the sanctuary on her motorcycle to meet a weapons dealer named Silvio Rudd in an East Side warehouse. Druitt finds her there. Druitt and Ashley fight. Druitt is faster than her, taller than her, more experienced than her. Druitt hits her face hard enough to open the cheek. Silvio shoots Druitt in the back with a taser gun. Druitt drops, faking unconsciousness. Ashley and Henry strap him to a gurney, load it into a side-loading van, and haul him back to the sanctuary. Henry takes Druitt to a holding cell. Druitt is not unconscious. Druitt forces Henry to disable the magnetic shield around the property at gunpoint. Druitt teleports through the building. Magnus realizes who has been brought in. Magnus runs to her study to grab a weapon. Druitt teleports in behind her, grabs Ashley, and disappears with her into the lower-level holding pens. He kisses the back of Ashley's head before he leaves her in a cell with the same species of large humanoid lizard that killed Will Zimmerman's mother in 1985. Druitt returns to Magnus's study. Druitt makes his demand. He wants a sample of her blood. The blood, taken in 1885, has kept her young. Druitt got the same injection. Druitt has been losing his mind in slow motion ever since. He believes Magnus's pure sample can stabilize him. He has, for over a century, been killing women in alleys when the rage takes him. He cannot stop. He needs the sample. In London, in the late 1880s, Magnus would later tell Will, the man teleporting around her study used to write to a newspaper under a different name. He used to send pieces of the women he killed to the police. The newspapers gave him a nickname. The newspapers called him the Whitechapel Killer. The newspapers called him Jack the Ripper. That is the man Helen Magnus was engaged to in 1885. That is also the man who, 2 centuries later, in a basement holding pen in a sanctuary in Old City, has just locked her teenage daughter in with the lizard creature that killed an 8-year-old child's mother in this exact city in 1985. Magnus loads a syringe out of a wooden box on her desk. She tells Druitt the sample is pure. He injects himself. She tells him, with a small sad smile, that she is sorry, but the sample was poisoned. He teleports out before the toxin lands. He warns her, on the way out, that the rest of the 5 are coming. Will, Bigfoot, and Magnus race down to the holding pen. Bigfoot fights the lizard creature off and gets slashed in the abdomen. Will grabs a busted pipe, jabs the creature with it, and uses the same pipe to knock the light filter loose. The unfiltered ultraviolet drives the lizard back. Magnus carries Ashley out. In the infirmary the next morning, Will confronts Magnus. He has put it together. The same woman who was engaged to a Whitechapel Killer in 1885 is the same woman who owns the sanctuary in 2008. Either one of them is a time traveler, or one of them is over 100 years old. Magnus, sitting at her desk in a study lit by London afternoon light, tells him she is 157 years old. She kept her late fiancé's child as a frozen embryo for almost a century. She brought the embryo to term in the basement when she could no longer bear the loneliness. She kept the truth from Ashley because the man Ashley would have called her father was the man on 150 years of police reports. Will tells her he will stay on one condition: no more lies. Magnus offers her hand. She tells him to begin. A foggy, moonlit Scottish field. An ancient burial site. 3 sarcophagi inside a low stone crypt. The team retrieves 3 women from the crypt who have been dead for over 1,000 years. The women wake up at the sanctuary. They are sisters. They call themselves Danu, Tatha, and Caird. The audience knows them by another name: the Morrigan. 3 medieval witches whose entire mission in the year 800 AD was to kill men. By touch, by draining a soul, by being themselves. The Morrigan wake up confused. The Morrigan cannot remember why everyone in their village died. The Morrigan are still wearing rings. The rings, Magnus identifies, belong to a private collector cult called Caballus Nocturnum, the Cabal, a secret society of pre-apocalypse rich human collectors who hunt and capture beings of power for private use. The Cabal arrives at the sanctuary in armored mercenary vehicles. The Cabal cuts the perimeter. The team holds the gate while the Morrigan finally remember who they are. The 3 sisters levitate hand in hand and begin draining the souls of the men in the room. Magnus stuns them with an energy gun. The Morrigan choose to leave with the Cabal voluntarily, on the condition that the Cabal not harm the sanctuary. Magnus has just made an enemy that will run the entire next season as the show's central villain. The Morrigan are gone. The Cabal will not be. Episode 3, the show that the audience thought it was watching, ends, and the show that the audience is about to be watching begins. A pawn shop is held up. The thief slips down a coal chute and squeezes through a 10-inch pipe to escape. The team is hunting a folder, a contortionist abnormal who can compress himself through any opening. The folders are organized into a small criminal gang led by a man called Nomad, who keeps his crew addicted to a gold-based painkiller called TPG. The team profiles the operation. The team brings in a homeless folder named Oliver Braithwaite, who used to be the gang's father figure before Nomad turned the kids against him. Oliver wants his son back. Will questions a captured folder named Malcolm. Malcolm worships Nomad. Malcolm thinks Nomad is going to set folders free. Nomad turns out to be Malcolm. The whole confession was bait. Malcolm has been running them in circles. The team raids the actual hideout. Will, who put it together late, is forced to watch his friend's son turn up dead, stuffed into an abandoned washing machine. The folder gang is broken up. The detox room is filled with kids who have a long road ahead. Will returns the case file to a former FBI colleague named Jake Polanski and lies to him. Will says the case went cold. Will is now living in a world he cannot put on paper. Helen Magnus is dreaming of London in 1885. John Druitt, alive and sane, takes her to the theater. He proposes in the carriage afterward. She accepts. She wakes up in the wreckage of a chartered cargo plane in the Hindu Kush mountain range somewhere in the Himalayas. The plane was bringing a captured Yeti-like abnormal home from a recovery mission. The abnormal got loose mid-flight. The abnormal brought the plane down. The pilot is dead. Magnus and Will and a small group of survivors crawl out into the snow. The Yeti is not gone. The Yeti is a shapeshifter. The Yeti picks the survivors off one at a time, taking each of their forms after killing them. The survivors start having dreams of their own pasts because the creature is using their memories against them. Magnus has been dreaming of London. Will has been dreaming of his mother. The Yeti takes Dr. Allison Grant's form first. It walks back into the cabin wearing her face and tells Will to step outside on a perimeter check. Will steps outside. The Yeti drops Grant's form, takes Will's, and walks back into the cabin to finish Magnus alone. Magnus offers him coffee. He accepts. Magnus hates coffee. The real Will would know it. She puts the Yeti down before it can take the kill. The rescue team breaks through the storm. The real Will comes back through the door. Magnus, shaken from the dream of the wedding she never had, walks out into the snow with him. The team retrieves a pair of small, furry abnormals. The show calls nubbins from the cargo hold of a ship in international waters, alongside a third predator-shaped creature that was hunting them. The nubbins are adorable. The nubbins are pheromonally radioactive. The nubbins make every adult in the sanctuary unable to keep their hands off whoever they are next to. Will and Ashley almost kiss in her bedroom by accident. Magnus and Will share an awkward moment in her study. Henry, the engineer, is allergic. The nubbins also reproduce instantly. 14 babies overnight, 50 by mid-morning, 70 by lunch. They eat through the sanctuary's computer system, chew through the cooling lines, take out the electrical, and get into the air purification. The water is the only system left. In the middle of it, a young woman named Sophie shows up at the gate with the body of her late grandfather, who spent his last years convinced he was an abnormal. The grandfather, Magnus confirms, was. So is Sophie. She has been seeing things she did not want to see for years. The team releases the predator to thin the nubbins. The predator turns out to be the prey. The nubbins kill it. The team finally figures out the nubbins respond to a specific ultrasonic frequency at distress, herds them into a corner with sound emitters, and freezes them with fire extinguishers. The infestation gets contained. Sophie, watching all of this, decides the world has more room for her than she thought. Magnus is in Rome giving a lecture on emerging abnormal trends to a small audience of academics and sanctuary network heads. The slides are tasteful. The room is quiet. A man in a black suit she does not recognize walks in halfway through and slips a note to a member of the audience to pass to her at the podium. The note says she will be murdered within 3 minutes unless she steps outside. She finishes her sentence. She steps outside. The man in the suit, in the corridor, calls her by name. He tells her to kiss him. He tells her that if she kisses him within the next 90 seconds, he will save her life. She refuses. He reminds her, with a small grin, that they have not seen each other in 60 years, and she should just plant one. She leans in to peck his cheek. He turns his face at the last second, so she lands on the lips instead. She pulls back. She gives him a look she has been giving him on 3 continents since the Cleveland's administration. Nikola Tesla. Yes, that one. Tesla, who Magnus helped fake the death of in 1943 to keep him out of US government custody, is alive. He has been alive the whole time. He took the same source blood injection in 1885 that she did. He turned out, the audience learned in the previous episode and learns in greater detail in this one, to have a dormant vampire gene that the source blood activated. He is, by sanctuary terminology, a vampire. He is also, in his own opinion, the smartest man who has ever lived. saved, the actual inventor of alternating current, the man Edison stole from, the man Marconi stole from, and the man no museum in the world has been giving proper credit. He is, in everyone else's opinion, exhausting. The cabal is closing on the lecture hall. Tesla pulls Magnus into the catacombs under the building. They run together through the tunnels, arguing about Druitt and the past while cabal soldiers close in. Back at the sanctuary, Druitt grabs Ashley off the street, hits her with a tranq dart, and teleports her to an abandoned warehouse. He tells her, finally, who he is. He tells her about the Five. The Five were 5 Oxford scientists in 1885 who took a sample of pure ancient vampire blood and injected themselves to evolve. Helen Magnus, John Druitt, James Watson, Nigel Griffin, Nikola Tesla, each got a different gift. Magnus stopped aging. Druitt got teleportation. Watson got hyperintelligence. Griffin got invisibility. Tesla turned vampire. Druitt is also Ashley's father. He has been telling her this in pieces for 2 episodes. He is finally saying it. Ashley does not take it well. Down in the catacombs, Tesla makes his pitch to Magnus. The Cabal is hunting him because he has been creating new vampires, out of fresh corpses, out of his own blood, out of an electric charge. He has just resurrected an entire underground species. He wants Magnus to come with him and rule the next golden age. Magnus refuses. Tesla orders his vampires to take her. Druitt teleports in, rams his fist through Tesla's abdomen, and saves both Magnus and Ashley. In the same episode, Henry Foss spends the B-plot fighting his own body. Henry is a HAP, hyper-accelerated protean, the show's polite term for werewolf. Henry has been hiding what he becomes when his body decides to turn for years. He has been on a private medication regimen Magnus designed for him. The medication is wearing off. He has been losing the fight against his own body in private for weeks. He is, every season, on the edge of giving up the version of himself that does not transform. Will, who notices something is off about Henry, gets attacked by an escaped reptile, abnormal in the sanctuary halls. Henry breaks his own self-control to save him. Henry turns. The transformation is fully practical. Brown fur, larger fangs, a wolfish face the prosthetic department in Vancouver clearly poured a budget into. Henry slams into the reptile and drives it straight out a window with a single roar. From the broken window above, Henry shifts back into a man in front of Will. He is shaking. He is the same friendly engineer Will has been working with since the pilot. Will, in the doorway, finally understands what kind of family he has signed up to live with. The B-plot pays off in episode 8, when Henry decides not to undergo a surgical procedure that would have removed the part of him that turns. He decides, with the example of a savant boy he watched draw the Sistine Chapel inside a city cistern, that the gift is not the curse. He is going to live with what he is. The audience now has, by the end of episode 8, the entire Sanctuary roster. Helen Magnus, immortal British scientist. Her daughter Ashley, biological daughter of John Druitt, raised in the basement. John Druitt, teleporting, dying, also Jack the Ripper. James Watson, the actual Sherlock Holmes, dying of mechanical brace failure. Nikola Tesla, vampire, electrical engineer, narcissist. Bigfoot, the chauffeur, the cook, the medic, the friend. Henry, the engineer, the wolf. Will Zimmerman, the FBI profiler, the fairy in a jar, the fire creature in containment, the two-faced man, Sally the mermaid behind glass. This is the team the show runs on for the next 4 seasons. Detective Joe Kavanaugh, the same old city cop who pushed Will Zimmerman off the apartment homicide in episode 1, brings Will a child homicide. The father, a man named Mr. Myers, is dead in his living room of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. The body is on the floor. The family rifle is next to him. The wound is in the chest, which Will, after a half-second look at the scene, flags as suspicious. Men who shoot themselves do it through the head. The chest is somebody else's gunshot. The room is full of drawings, hundreds of them. Pencil sketches of monsters and abnormals on every available surface. The drawings are by the dead man's son, Edward Myers, a small boy sitting on the bed in the corner, rocking, drawing. Edward draws with the precision of a security camera. Edward, when Will places a single sheet in front of him, can render an entire room from memory in less than 90 seconds. Edward, when Magnus brings him home to the sanctuary, draws the sanctuary itself in full architectural detail, exactly as it looked 10 years ago, when the North Tower was halfway through renovation. He cannot have seen the building before. He has never been inside it. Edward is, Magnus diagnoses by the second act, an abnormal whose visual cortex acts as a documentary camera with subpoena power. He sees the actual past. He sees true forms. He sees when looking at people, who they really are. He has another gift too. Edward, when he gets stressed, can ignite things across the room with his eyes. The team finds out the hard way when Magnus pushes him, in interview, to recall the night of his father's death. He has a seizure. Heat rays come out of his retinas. Magnus's blouse catches fire. Magnus and Will piece it together. The chamber Will found under the family basement, locked with chains on the wall and burn scars on the floor, was not for Edward. It was for Edward's father. The father had the same gift. The father had been seizing for years. On the night in question, the father had turned the rifle on Edward in the family's living room. Robbie, the older brother, came in and grabbed the gun. The father, knowing he was losing control of his eyes, used his own heat ray vision to ignite the powder in the rifle's chamber. The gun fired without anyone pulling the trigger. The father killed himself before his eyes could ignite his family. Edward draws the moment. The team reconstructs it from the drawings. Robbie has been missing since that night. The team finds him hiding in a city cistern, alone, with a stolen flashlight and a small box of pencils. Robbie has been there for weeks. Robbie has been drawing too. The cistern ceiling, when Will shines his light up, is covered in an exact replica of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel painting in graphite and chalk. 2 stories of fresco rendered from memory by a boy who has never been to Rome. The team brings both brothers in. Edward is reunited with his mother. Robbie is given a room. Henry Foss, in the same episode, is preparing for a surgical procedure that would remove his lichen transformation gene from his nervous system. He has been planning it for weeks. He has been telling Magnus he wants to be a normal person. He watches Edward and Robbie reunite in the corridor. He looks at Magnus. He cancels the surgery. Sanctuary, in episode 8, has just turned in its first quiet thesis statement. The gift is not the curse. The gift is the gift. The hiding is the curse. The Sanctuary submarine, the Nautilus, is in the Bermuda Triangle. The mermaid Sally has telepathically picked up a distress call from her people. Magnus and Will dive to find a mass grave. Over 100 dead merfolk floating in the deep, none of them killed by predators. Magnus brings a body aboard for autopsy. Magnus is touched by a clear fluid she cannot identify. The fluid is a parasite. The parasite eats the logic center of its host's brain and turns the host into a raging killer. The merfolk killed each other under the parasite's control. Magnus is now infected. Will, alone on a sub 3,000 feet down in open water with a woman who is in the process of becoming a killer, has to make a series of small decisions. She knocks him out from behind and cuffs him to a chair. She walks into a flooded section of the sub. He works the cuffs off, follows her, and tries to lock the bulkhead behind her. She comes back through and drags him into the flooded section with her. He pulls a gun on her. She takes it. She pulls the trigger on him. He has removed the magazine. She takes the ship deeper. He locks her in a control room and vents the oxygen from that section, letting her pass out while the parasite leaves her looking for a new host. He freezes the parasite the moment it leaves her body. He revives her. She wakes up. She thanks him. She tells him, on the way home, that she has known for a long time her work would outlast her. She tells him the day will come when he will have to take it on. They both agree the day is not today. This is the show telling Will and the audience that Helen Magnus is preparing him to replace her. The show will, 3 seasons later, ask if it meant it. Will's college best friend goes missing. The team traces the disappearances of a string of homeless men to an underground fight club running illegal gladiator matches with abnormals. The fights are organized by a man named Peralta. Peralta is fronting for the Cabal. The Cabal is not just collecting abnormals anymore. The Cabal is engineering them. The Cabal is breeding super soldiers using a parasitic insect called a scarab that grafts into the spine of the host and makes them hyper-aggressive. A homeless drifter named Charlie shows up at the warehouse where the team is investigating. Charlie is, biologically, Magnus's father, Dr. Gregory Magnus, founder of the entire Sanctuary network and author of all the abnormal research the show has been running on. Magnus has thought him dead since the 1880s. Charlie does not remember being him. Charlie has a Y-shaped surgical scar on the back of his neck and a scarab in his spine. Will, going alone to a meet, gets the same scarab grafted into his back. Will turns into a Hulk. Will fights his college best friend in a meatpacking plant. Magnus operates on her father in the Sanctuary infirmary, while Henry, in the warehouse, talks Will down by simply repeating the truth out loud to him. This is not you. This is not you. The Hulk recedes. The scarab is removed. Both men come back. Magnus removes the scarab from her father. He wakes up. He says her name. He tells her, at the end of the hour that he cannot stay. The Cabal is hunting him. He will not bring them to her. He kisses her forehead. He walks out. He promises he will not be far. Magnus, who has not seen her father since 1880, sits alone in her study, while the man she has been searching for 128 years walks back into the world without her. A Channel 13 weather reporter named Amy Saunders and her cameraman Zach Pencer crash the team's containment of a giant insect-like abnormal in a warehouse. They refuse to leave. The team agrees to let them film on the condition that they follow orders. The insect is the female of a mating pair. The team finds 8 embryos in a refrigerated container nearby. The pheromones the team has been chasing are a mother defending her young. The team captures her alive and locks her in the shipping container. The team thinks they have won. The team has not won. There are 2 creatures. The second creature, the male, has been in the warehouse the whole time. He kills the entire SWAT team that arrived to clean up the scene. The second creature jumps on Zach, the cameraman, during the firefight. Zach gets killed in the last 60 seconds of the episode. He has just heard Ashley agree to a date with him when the creature hits him. His own camera spins as it falls and lands on its side, lens fixed on his body on the warehouse floor. Magnus a few feet away checking his pulse. The next scene, the audience finds out the entire episode has been the team replaying Zach's recovered footage on a TV in Magnus's study. Amy is in the room asking for the footage. Magnus hands her the camera drive. Amy goes home and plays it. The entire drive is a single recorded message from Magnus telling her, calmly, that the footage has been replaced. Have a good career. Sanctuary, in episode 11, just spent 40 minutes teaching the audience how to watch a found footage ghost story and then handed the audience a postcard from the producer. A Cabal drone drops a pathogen bomb in the Yukon. Abnormals in the area start murdering each other for no reason. The Cabal is testing a bioweapon designed to make abnormals lose control. The first phase is a dry run. The second phase, the Cabal's full operation, is called Lazarus. Druid brings the team a piece of the burn dispersal device. The team locks him in a holding cell. He insists on staying. He says he will not stand idle while the Cabal poisons their kind. Magnus reluctantly agrees. The team needs the source blood, the original vampire blood Magnus's father hid in 1880, to make an antigen. The blood is locked in a labyrinth under the lost city of Balasam. Only the 5, acting together, can unlock it. 3 of the 5 are at the sanctuary. Tesla is presumed dead. Nigel Griffin, the Invisible Man, died in the 1950s. Griffin, however, sent Magnus a letter before he died. He passed his power to his daughter, Anna. The team needs Anna or her line. James Watson arrives at the sanctuary. Watson is the 4th member of the 5. Watson is the man Sherlock Holmes was based on. Watson, in his own opinion, was the actual detective Conan Doyle wrote about, and Doyle made him the sidekick out of professional jealousy. Watson is wearing a complicated mechanical brace because his body has been failing for decades, and he has been holding it together with steel. Watson agrees to come to Balasam. Will and Druid teleport to Baton Rouge to find Anna Griffin's daughter, Clara. Clara is invisible, 20 years old, hostile, and very alone. Will manages to talk her into coming. Bigfoot collapses. Bigfoot has been infected with the pathogen the Cabal seeded. The team realizes the bioweapon is on Druid's clothes. The sanctuary is under quarantine. Ashley pushes Magnus until Magnus reluctantly lets her and Henry sneak into a Cabal weapons factory to find Lazarus. Both of them are captured. Ashley wakes up in a glass-walled room with a Cabal director named Dana Whitcomb. Whitcomb tells Ashley her mother is going to fail, and that Ashley herself is going to be the reason. Magnus and Watson and Druid and Will and Clara teleport to Balasam. Balasam is a smoking ruin. The lost city has been bombed to gravel. The team starts digging. Inside the labyrinth under Balasam, in a stone chamber Gregory Magnus sealed in 1880, the team digs into the buried Hall of Records. They find a stone pentagram table. They find a Latin scroll in Gregory Magnus's handwriting. They find a map drawn in his hand of 5 separate trial chambers, each calibrated to one of the 5. Then, a figure walks out of the dark, smiling, alive, wearing the same coat he was wearing when Druid punched a hole through his abdomen in Season 1, Episode 7, with no apparent injury, with no apparent surprise. Nikola Tesla. Tesla survived Druid's punch. Tesla survived the Cabal's vampire creations. Tesla has been coming to Balasam for decades trying to crack this labyrinth alone and has never gotten past the first door. Tesla pitches the team. He still wants the blood. He still wants the new golden age. He swears, this time, he will not take it for himself. Nobody believes him. The team takes him anyway because he is the 5th member of the 5 and the puzzle does not open without all 5. Druid does not enjoy this. Druid almost kills him in the entryway. Magnus stops it. The labyrinth is built on the Five's individual gifts. Each member of the Five has a chamber tuned to them. Tesla's chamber is a corridor wired with a geomagnetic current Gregory Magnus drew up out of the Earth's mantle. The voltage is calibrated to a level that would kill any conventional human and possibly any conventional vampire. Tesla, who is half made of electricity, walks into it. He screams. He keeps walking. He emerges on the other side soaked through with current and clutching the first key. "Your father really didn't like me, did he?" says. Magnus tells him he is an acquired taste. Druid and Watson's chamber is 2 doors next to each other. Each door is labeled in Latin with a slightly different phrase. Truth lies, lies truth. One door is the right door, the other is solid rock. Druid cannot teleport through both to test. Watson, who has spent 110 years quietly being the smartest detective on Earth, parses the linguistic difference and picks lies truth. Druid grabs Watson by the lapel and asks if his old friend is taking the chance to get him killed for his Whitechapel days. Watson smiles. The door opens. They get the second key. Will and Clara's chamber is a stone floor calibrated to detect cast shadows. Clara needs to cross the floor invisible. Clara has been struggling with her invisibility all season. Clara, on the threshold, in front of Will, makes both of them strip down to their underwear because she cannot relax enough to disappear with her clothes on. Will, in his shorts, watches Clara go fully invisible. They cross the floor together. They grab the key. The floor cracks open behind them. Clara becomes briefly visible, jumping the chasm. She lands on the other side. They get the third key. Magnus's chamber is a small bowl of sand on a pedestal. The puzzle on the wall is a single mathematical statement. 2 times 2. The door is locked. Magnus, who has been Gregory Magnus's daughter for 128 years, knows her father's sense of humor. 2 times 2 does not equal 4 to him. 2 times 2 equals infinity. The math is a riddle for the daughter only. She draws a sideways figure 8 in the sand. The door opens. She gets the 4th key. The team places the keys in the pentagram table. A door at the end of the hall opens. Inside, on a small marble pedestal, is a glass vial. The pure source blood. Untouched since 1880. Watson collapses against the wall. His mechanical brace, which has been holding his body together for over 100 years, has finally cycled out. He has known, since they boarded the plane to Tibet, that he was not coming back from this mission. He did not tell anyone. He looks at Magnus. He looks at Druid. He looks at Tesla. He delivers, with the small, dry smile he has been giving Magnus since Oxford, the line he has been saving. "You I shall miss." He gives Will, before he goes, the gift the show is built on. He tells Will the puzzle was too easy. The blood was too accessible. The team was meant to find it. The keys were meant to be there. There is something they are not seeing. Will is going to have to find the missing piece. He dies. Druid teleports the team back to the sanctuary. Ashley and Henry are extracted alive. Ashley collapses in her mother's arms. Up on the roof, Clara kisses Will and tells him the view was too romantic to refuse. Down in the infirmary, Magnus watches over a sleeping Ashley. As soon as Magnus closes the door behind her, Ashley's eyes open. The blood, in its vial, vanishes from Magnus's safe. Magnus marches into her study. She points a gun at Druid. Druid swears he has been there the whole time. Will, running into the study a second later, finally puts together what Watson was warning them about. The Cabal did not capture Ashley to interrogate her. The Cabal captured Ashley to reprogram her. Lazarus is not a weapon. Lazarus is a person. Lazarus is Ashley. On the other side of the planet, on Easter Island, Ashley teleports in next to Dana Whitcomb and hands her the source blood. Whitcomb thanks her. Whitcomb tells her she has been everything they could have hoped for. Welcome to your rebirth. Cut to black. The first season finale of Sanctuary just turned the heroine's daughter into the Cabal's weapon. Season 2 starts in 2 weeks. 6 weeks later, Cairo. Magnus is sitting across from a small, bald Egyptian abnormal named Assam in a back room of a market, trying to buy information on her daughter's whereabouts. Assam is a snake addict. Assam takes a tiny snake out of a velvet box and swallows it like a pill while she watches. Magnus puts a gun on the table. Assam laughs. Druid teleports into the alley behind Assam's shop and threatens to drop him in a glacier. Assam talks. The Cabal owns Ashley now. Ashley is no longer Ashley. The girl Magnus raised is dead. Magnus does not believe him. Magnus refuses to believe him. Ashley, meanwhile, is teleporting in and out of an Interpol data farm in Montreal, stealing classified hard drives and walking out clean. She is operating with the abilities of every member of the Five at once. The Cabal injected Ashley with the source blood Helen Magnus's father hid for 120 years. The Cabal has done it 5 more times to 5 other women. They are calling them Phase 3 Super Abnormals. Will reaches out to a freelance criminal named Kate Freelander who briefly worked for the Cabal as a headhunter. Kate, after almost getting shot in the leg by Magnus and almost getting blown up by her former employer, drags herself to the sanctuary front gate, bleeding out, and asks for sanctuary. The sanctuary takes her in. Bigfoot is dying of the Lazarus pathogen the Cabal seeded back in Season 1. Tesla has cooked up a cure. Bigfoot refuses to take it. He will not betray his people by accepting human medicine. Henry, who Magnus took in as a frightened child, sits at his bedside and cannot accept what is happening. The team tracks the Cabal to a remote facility in Alberta. Druitt teleports them in. The facility is empty. It is bait. Ashley appears, eyes burning, expression dead. Druitt and Ashley have a teleportation duel. Ashley wins. Tesla goes for her. Tesla loses. Will fires. Will's bullets do not hurt her. Druitt teleports the team out before she finishes them. In the Cabal command room, Whitcomb informs the senior board that Phase 3 is operational. The 6 super abnormals have a single first mission: the destruction of the entire sanctuary network. Magnus calls Whitcomb. Whitcomb offers a trade. Ashley back in exchange for the sanctuary network. Magnus throws the phone into a wall. The Cabal hits the Tokyo sanctuary first. The Tokyo head, Dr. Hiramoto, is dead in 20 minutes. The sanctuary is on fire. The data is stolen. The network goes on full war footing for the first time in its 130-year history. Beijing falls. New Delhi falls. Moscow falls. Magnus, Druitt, Tesla, Will, and Bigfoot relocate to the London sanctuary, run by acting head Declan McRae after the death of James Watson. Clara Griffin, Will's girlfriend since the Season 1 finale, refuses to evacuate. She insists on fighting. 4 super abnormals teleport into the London sanctuary at once. They go through Druitt. They go through Tesla. They go through Will. Clara, fully cloaked, pulls Will out of an ambush in a hallway. The team funnels the super abnormals into the main lab, locks them in, and releases a fire elemental in with them. The super abnormals retreat. Clara is dead. Will sits on a step in the smoking ruin of the London sanctuary and does not say anything for a long beat. Back at the Old City sanctuary, Magnus orders Tesla to retool the radiation weapon using a sample of Ashley's pre-conversion blood. She is preparing to kill her own daughter to save the network. Henry and Bigfoot cannot meet her eyes. She does it anyway. The Cabal hacks Will's cell phone, pushes the malware through the sanctuary firewall, and disables the EM shield. The surviving super abnormals teleport in. The team takes them down one at a time. Magnus uses the weapon. Tesla and Druitt fight in a hallway. Will is ambushed. Bigfoot, who has secretly taken the Lazarus cure to fight, comes through a wall and saves him. Henry brings the EM shield back up. The shield catches a teleporting super abnormal mid-jump, and he disintegrates in a burst of fire and ash. In the main lab, Magnus finally faces Ashley alone. She has the weapon raised. She has the shot. She has the angle. She does not pull the trigger. Ashley, the part of Ashley that is still Ashley, looks at her mother for one long beat and then attacks anyway. Kate Freelander, the woman Magnus did not trust 3 days ago, the criminal contractor who walked through the front gate bleeding out from a Cabal contract, steps into the doorway with a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher she pulled out of the season's first armory and fires. The rocket hits the floor between Ashley and the last female super abnormal. Ashley, in the last microsecond, in the last frame the audience will ever get of her as the daughter Helen Magnus knew, grabs the other woman's arm and teleports them both into the still active EM shield. Both women disintegrate into fire and smoke. Ashley, who was born in the sanctuary basement, who was raised by an immortal mother and a Sasquatch chauffeur, who carried more guns than any teenager in television history, who took the venomous snake strike for Will Zimmerman in the pilot episode, who beat up 2 transit cops in the same pilot, who roared into the Sister of Mercy compound on a motorcycle, who told Helen Magnus in a hallway that the part that hurt was her mother not telling her about her father first, who learned in a warehouse in Season 1, Episode 7 that her father was Jack the Ripper, who survived a poison from a teleporting psychopath who kissed the back of her head before locking her in with a lizard creature who fought a Fight Club super abnormal squad through 3 time zones in 3 days, dies in Episode 2 of Season 2. Magnus is left on the floor of her own lab. She does not stand up for a long time. She does not say anything for a longer time. The team, watching from the door, gives her the room. The first major character death of the show is also the first plot point of the second season. The next 11 episodes are built on top of it. The audience does not yet know that Sanctuary is going to be a show that kills its main character's daughter in episode 15 and then keeps moving. But the audience finds out, in real time, in this room, on this floor, that Sanctuary is willing to do it. The team picks up the pieces. The Sanctuary takes in waves of refugee abnormals from the the destroyed Tokyo, Beijing, New Delhi, and Moscow sanctuaries. Hundreds of arrivals per day. Will Zimmerman, who has never run a logistics operation, runs logistics. He underestimates how many trucks they will need by half on the first day. Henry and Bigfoot in the lower kitchen work 20-hour rotations to feed the residents. Two-faced Guy, the abnormal who has been a sanctuary resident since the pilot, helps with the dishes. Kate Freelander, who has nowhere else to go after the Cabal blacklisted her, sticks around. She is openly told by Will and Henry and Bigfoot that nobody on this floor trusts her. She does her own laundry. She sleeps in a guest room near the lobby. She does not eat in the cafeteria. Magnus does not believe Ashley is dead. The audience is not sure either. Magnus is having visions of her daughter in different rooms of the sanctuary, on different floors, in different lights. Magnus believes Ashley got caught in the EM shield's energy buffer at the moment she teleported into it and is somewhere inside the sanctuary as a pattern of light waiting to be reassembled. Magnus is keeping a quiet, brave face on something that is, very plainly, breaking her. Will, watching her hold this together, asks her what she needs from him. She tells him she needs an emotional compass. She acted on her feelings once and almost destroyed the entire sanctuary network. She does not want to do it again. In a B-plot, a small abnormal called a stenopelhabilis is born in the cargo hold during transport and escapes into the city. Kate, in pursuit, gets bitten on the hand. The creature, like a duckling, imprints on the first person it sees after birth. The first person it sees is Kate. The creature, when she finds it again in the sewers, follows her home. Kate carries it back to the sanctuary in her coat. Bigfoot, on first sight, likes it. Kate names it Ralphie. Henry, who has been openly hostile to Kate for the entire episode, pays her a pair of stenopelhabilis tusks worth a small fortune for the rescue. Kate, in the closing scene of the B-plot, gives them back. Magnus, finally, lets herself bury Ashley. The team holds a small memorial in the ruins of the sanctuary's old cathedral. The cathedral is half collapsed from the season premiere battle. There are candles. The team is in dark clothes. The casket is empty. They have come to put things in it. Bigfoot stands at the back. Henry has his hands in his pockets. Kate, who did not know Ashley, stands near the door. Magnus walks to the empty casket and puts in a small piece of silver jewelry given to her by a Native American tribe she helped in 1957. Ashley wore it as a teenager. Magnus has until tonight kept it in a drawer in her study. The rest of the team places their own keepsakes in beside it. Druitt does not attend. Druitt is, in this episode, sitting at a small Parisian street cafe with a newspaper raised in front of his face, watching Dana Whitcomb across the street drink an espresso. Whitcomb does not see him. Druitt folds the newspaper and follows her into the street. The audience, at the end of the season, will find out he caught her. Magnus, alone in her study after the memorial, lets herself look at the small silver bracelet she has been holding. She has the last vision of Ashley the show is going to give her on screen. Ashley, years younger, in the corner of the study, tells her mother to let go. Ashley tells her she is never going to leave her side. Magnus in the chair finally lets herself cry. The audience now knows that Sanctuary is going to keep moving, and that Magnus is going to keep being the woman who walks into the next room with her hands in her pockets and her shoulders straight and her hair done. Sanctuary is, after the death of Ashley Magnus, a show about how Magnus does that. A heavy-set man in a homemade superhero costume named the Adjuster is flying around Old City, rescuing abnormals from the Sanctuary's recovery teams. The team finds out, after stunning him, that the suit is alive. The suit is a colony of small, abnormal bugs who feed on the wearer in exchange for giving him strength and the ability to fly. The Adjuster, whose actual name is Walter, found the colony in a cave years ago, and the colony bonded with him. He cannot take it off without dying. Walter, eventually, decides to let the colony go. The colony leaves him. Walter writes a comic book about himself. The comic book gets nominated for awards. Kate Freelander, in a B-plot, deals with her gambling addict brother Tad and his crime boss creditor Constantine. She trades a stenopelhabilis tusk to clear the debt. Constantine refuses the trade. He wants her connections at the Sanctuary instead. He wants Kate to deliver him an abnormal. Kate, who has been working for criminals her entire adult life, walks Constantine into the main lab herself, opens the wrong cell on purpose, and lets Constantine get eaten by a sorkle. The guard who came with him gets to leave alive on the condition he tells the rest of the city Kate Freelander is not for sale. Magnus moves Kate's belongings into a permanent bed bedroom in the residential wing. Kate, for the first time on this show, lets herself smile. Magnus wakes up in a derelict ruin of her own sanctuary. The walls are full of cobwebs. The lights do not work. The wallpaper is peeled. The mermaid tank is empty. The bookshelves in her study have collapsed. Her own bed is a frame in the dark. She walks to the roof. Old City, outside the windows, is a smoking apocalypse. Buildings down, streets burned, smoke columns over the river. She finds a coat in her own closet and walks down into the street with a spear because she could not find a working firearm in time. She is attacked by a stranger with a long brown tongue. She is rescued in the same minute by a small armed team in biohazard suits. They sedate her. They take her underground. They strip her, decontaminate her, and put her in clean clothes. The leader of the small armed team is, with one blinded eye, 12 years older than the day before. Will Zimmerman. Will tells her she died 3 years ago. The battle for Buenos Aires. He tells her the plague spread out of a Mayan temple in Honduras 10 years before that and wiped out most of human and abnormal life on the planet. The world he is showing her has about 100,000 humans left and rising losses. Magnus, going through the wreckage of her own files, finds her own decade-old expedition log. She went to Honduras 10 years ago, looking for an Mayan abnormal artifact. She opened the seal on a small vial. The vial was the source of the plague. She also finds the personnel file. Henry Foss, in this future, built weapons for the government until he was infected himself. Bigfoot stayed at the sanctuary defending the residents until he died. Kate Freelander died leading a fighting line. John Druitt took a tactical nuclear warhead, teleported into the middle of the enemy in Boston, and detonated himself in the dirt, taking most of the city with him. Will, in the last act, reveals he has been bitten. He has hours. He asks Magnus to mercy him when his time comes. He asks her to find his and Kate's son in the surviving outposts. The boy's name, Will tells her, is Magnus Zimmerman, the infected close in on the lab. Will goes to hold the corridor. Magnus, in the lab alone, finally cracks open her own decade-old research. The plague is real. The vial is real. The seal is real. She replays the moment in Honduras as a memory and notices something she did not notice the first time. A small flickering energy cloud was in the chamber with her when she opened the seal. The cloud is the future tense version of the entire episode. Magnus is yanked back through the cloud and finds herself standing in the original Mayan chamber 10 years ago, vial in hand, with the cloud watching her. The cloud is the Guardian, a time-traveling abnormal whose entire job is to ensure people do not open the seals on extinct viruses. The Guardian shows her the future to make her choose differently. The Guardian asks her, without speaking, to walk away. She walks away. The vial stays closed. She returns to the present. The sanctuary is whole. The team is whole. Will is whole. The mermaid tank is full. Old City outside the window is a beautiful day. Magnus does not tell Will what she just saw. She does not ever tell anyone. The audience is the only one who knows what she traded 10 years ago. The audience also realizes, in the closing scene, that the show has just played a fully constructed alternate future apocalypse as one woman's bad dream, with the central reveal that the apocalypse was a kindness. A sanctuary scientist named Rachel is attacked in a lab by an abnormal named Jack, who has been peaceful for years. Rachel is infected with Jack's spores and is dying. Henry, who has known Rachel for years, who has been quietly in love with her since the day they met, sits at her bedside. Rachel survives. Rachel's husband Gerald, also a sanctuary biochemist, turns out to have poisoned Jack's food with a Siberian fungus that triggers aggression. He wanted Jack to kill Henry. Henry was supposed to be the one feeding Jack that morning. Rachel covered the shift. Gerald is taken away. Rachel, in the garden afterward, tells Henry she was always in love with him too. She tells him she only married Gerald because Henry never moved. She watches Henry's face as he realizes she is asking him to move now. He cannot. Rachel walks back inside. Henry, the engineer, the kid Magnus took in, the wolf, has had exactly one chance at the great love of his life, and the show, very quietly, in episode 6, lets him miss it. The cold open is a sucker punch. Will Zimmerman walks into the sanctuary's morgue and finds Declan McRae standing over a sheet on a gurney. Declan pulls the sheet back. The body underneath is Bigfoot. Bigfoot has been shot multiple times. The murder weapon, recovered at the scene, belongs to Helen Magnus. The sanctuary's own surveillance footage, when Henry decrypts it, shows Magnus pulling the trigger. Declan has, in private, already invoked Article 9 of the Sanctuary Charter. The article allows the second senior member of the global network to remove the head of house from command if the head of house is suspected of crimes against the network. Magnus is in isolation. Magnus, when Will visits her, tells him she has no memory of the past week. She tells him she suspects somebody has been editing her own brain. She begs him to help her. The other heads of house respond. They send a triad of telepaths to evaluate Magnus's mind. The lead telepath is a woman named Emma Correa. She is the only female in the triad. She is, on first meeting, charmed by Will Zimmerman, and Will Zimmerman is charmed by her in return. The episode plays for 42 minutes as a procedural mystery. Henry hacks into Magnus's encrypted files. The brain scans Magnus has secretly been making of herself show advanced, degenerative changes. The scans suggest she has known her condition was getting worse and has been preparing Will to replace her. The triad, after evaluating Magnus, declares her unfit to lead. Declan is appointed acting head of the Old City Sanctuary. Magnus, increasingly paranoid, attacks Will when he visits her. Will and Kate find her in an abandoned warehouse and bring her back. Magnus collapses in seizures. The triad's findings hold. Then the wheels turn the wrong way, under Will's feet. Will visits Bigfoot's sarcophagus to say goodbye. He opens the lid out of one last instinct. The sarcophagus is empty. Will, who has been a profiler since before the show began, finally puts it together. Bigfoot is alive. The murder is staged. The brain scans are fake. Magnus has not been losing her mind. Magnus has been performing every step of this for weeks. Magnus has been baiting somebody. The somebody is Emma Correa. The bait is a hidden sanctuary project file Henry discovers deep in the network's encrypted system. The file is titled Big Bertha. Big Bertha is a hyper-abnormal. Big Bertha can shift tectonic plates by altering her body's magnetic resonance. Magnus tracked her down 4 years ago and told the network she had killed her, when in fact Magnus quietly diverted her into a custom containment field at the bottom of the Indian Ocean for ethical reasons. Big Bertha, the file claims, is being moved to a new location. Emma reads the file. Emma calls a contact off network. Emma sells the location to a mercenary cell operating off the African coast. Will and Declan arrest Emma at a port in Djibouti as the cell tries to extract a containment crate that turns out to hold a tracking device, not the abnormal. The cabal is rolled up. Emma is taken into custody. Magnus, in her own infirmary, sits up out of her coma and tells Will she is sorry she had to play it this way. But the leak in the network had been growing for months. The audience finds out, on Magnus's lab bench, that Big Bertha is alive. Bigfoot is alive. Magnus is alive. Henry is alive. The audience does not yet know what Big Bertha is. The audience finds out, in the season finale 5 episodes later, that the woman the sanctuary has been hiding at the bottom of the Indian Ocean is the actual Hindu goddess Kali. In the closing scene, Bigfoot and Henry meet in the elevator. Henry, deadpan, tells Bigfoot that if he ever fakes his own death again, Henry will personally shoot him. Bigfoot does not respond. The audience now knows that Sanctuary, when it wants to, can build a 42-minute network procedural mystery and use the entire procedural as a cover story for the real plot. Will and Magnus are flying a captured vampire squid back to the Sanctuary in a small helicopter. Henry and Bigfoot are on vacation in Tasmania. Magnus has refused to let Will go to a conference in Reykjavik because she needed him on the Gulf retrieval. Will has, all morning, been borderline insufferable about it. Then the squid breaks out of its cage. The helicopter goes down on a decommissioned oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. The squid is in the water below. The helicopter is hanging from cables on the side of the rig. Will and Magnus, soaking wet, are dangling above a hostile, abnormal squid with 7,000 square feet of platform between them and dry land. The episode is a bottle play. 42 minutes of 2 characters working a survival problem in real time while having every conversation they have been deflecting for 2 seasons. Will and Magnus build a transponder antenna by routing the helicopter's emergency signal through the entire rig's structural cabling. The transponder works for 1 transmission. The battery dies after the call. The rescue is, optimistically, 12 hours out. Will and Magnus get pulled into the water. The squid attacks. Magnus stabs one of its tentacles. Will surfaces. They climb back up to the platform. They change clothes in adjacent locker bays. They talk through a wall. Will, who has been trying to convince Magnus to take a vacation since season 1, finally asks her the question. Where do you actually go? Magnus tells him. Capri, a villa she owns. She visits once every 7 years. The audience now knows that Helen Magnus has been operating on a rotation that includes a single Mediterranean week every 7 years. She also mentions, in the same conversation, that this is the second time in her life she has been stranded in open water. The first time, she tells Will, was April 14th, 1912. Will lifts his head. She mentions it the way somebody mentions where they got their hair cut last week. She does not embellish. She does not lean into it. She mentions in passing that she was on the RMS Titanic the night it went down. The line drops on Will. Will, who has known for 2 seasons that this woman is over 150 years old, has not, until this exact line of dialogue, fully processed the math. In the third act of The Bottle, Magnus and Will trick the squid in the water and a sea scorpion in the helicopter cabin into fighting each other. Magnus uses a flare to blow up the helicopter and drop it into the ocean. Both creatures sink with the wreck. The two of them sit on the rig waiting for rescue. Will finally asks her one more question. Why did she actually need him to stay home this week? Why this week specifically? Magnus, looking out at the open water, in a soaked sanctuary jumpsuit, tells him the answer. Next Tuesday is Ashley's birthday, the first one since Ashley died in the EM Shield in episode 2 of this season. Magnus did not want to be alone. Will, on the rig, sits down next to her and stays. Kate Freelander is shot in the shoulder during a deal that goes wrong. She is dragged to a safe house by an old friend of Magnus's, a human-looking abnormal smuggler named Jimmy who hides things in an abdominal pouch. Jimmy has, in his pouch, a Tunisian fire elemental. The Chicago abnormal mob has the elemental on a contract. Jimmy and Kate spend the episode talking through the wound. Kate tells him her father, a small-time criminal, was being held at a police station when the building was bombed. Her mother went into labor from the shock. Kate barely survived being born. Jimmy slowly realizes whose daughter she is. Jimmy was the bomber. Jimmy was 16 years old in a gang. Jimmy planted the device. Kate puts it together a beat later than the audience does. She points her gun at him. Jimmy lowers his. Bigfoot arrives in time to talk her down. In the rescue itself, Jimmy walks willingly into the mob's car with the elemental in his pouch. He hands Duke, the mob boss, a switched container. The container is a brick of C4. Duke's car explodes a block down the street. Magnus, that night, apologizes to Kate for not knowing her well enough to see this coming. Kate tells her she has been blaming one bad night her whole life for everything that has gone wrong since. She tells her finally that going forward is on her. Nikola Tesla, hiding under a German alias at a private Mexican rehab clinic, has been quietly converting trust fund kids into vampires for a year. His pitch to Magnus, when she finds him, is that in 30 years these kids will have inherited their family's fortunes and political positions and quietly take over the world from the inside, slowly, elegantly, with his blood in their veins. The trust fund kids find out. The trust fund kids do not want to wait 30 years. The trust fund kids accelerate the conversion by killing each other and rising as a faster, hungrier strain of vampire than Tesla ever was. Tesla, in the back half of the episode, hands Magnus the failsafe weapon he hid years ago inside a 1944 bottle of wine Churchill gave Magnus for D-Day. The weapon is a D-Vamper. He uses it on the lead trust fund vampire. The lead vampire grabs Tesla in the same beat. The D-Vamper hits Tesla too. Tesla wakes up human. Tesla, in the first commercial break of the season, has lost his vampire gifts. The most arrogant member of the five is now an ordinary man in a tailored suit. Tesla, by the end of the episode, discovers he has somehow picked up a small magnetic ability. He can move metal with his hand. He grins at Magnus. He says, on screen, that he can work with that. Druid teleports a shipload of injured Zulu empaths from a burning South African sanctuary to Old City. Once back at the sanctuary, one of the female empaths confronts him about the dark side she can feel inside him. He cuts her throat with a small knife. Magnus arrests him. He admits, finally, that the dark side that turned him into Jack the Ripper is back. The sanctuary's power grid starts behaving strangely. Doors lock, the elevator drops. The building, in the second act, goes hostile. The dark side is not Druid. The dark side has never been Druid. The dark side is an energy parasite Druid picked up during one of his earliest teleports, back when his powers first manifested. The parasite has been riding inside him for over a century and feeding on the chaos he creates. When the team kills Druid with a special weapon and revives him, the parasite jumps loose into the sanctuary's power grid. The team fights it through the building. Druid, finally clean, in the last act, declares his eternal love for Magnus and teleports into the lab to absorb the parasite back into his own body. He has it again. He chooses to carry it again so that it does not eat the sanctuary. He teleports out into the unknown. Druid has been Jack the Ripper for over 120 years for one reason. He picked up a passenger. The show has, in episode 11 of season 2, finally given the audience the answer to the question the entire mythology was built on, and then walked the answer out the door. A young man in the slums of Mumbai opens a small shrine, releases a spider-like abnormal called a mockery from his mouth and is murdered moments later by armed men in expensive boots. An old woman named Rekka witnesses the murder and disappears. Across the world, abnormals start running amok. A docile Tokyo lizard, a pterodactyl over London, a sandray in the Egyptian desert. The Sanctuary Network goes on alert. Magnus, Will, and Kate fly to Mumbai. Will accidentally takes the mockery home in his clothes. The mockery that night crawls into his mouth. Will starts having visions of a beautiful Indian goddess in a blue dress. The visions are real. Big Bertha, the abnormal Magnus has been hiding at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, is the same being the cult of Kali has been worshipping for centuries. The mockery is a remote control. The remote control connects whoever swallows it to Bertha. Will, by accident, is now her herald. The hunters who killed the cultists take Will. Their leader, a billionaire named Edward Forsyth, swallows the mockery himself. Forsyth is not interested in being a herald. Forsyth is interested in commanding Bertha to remake the planet for him personally. Bertha had already responded to the Mumbai EM pulse with a pulse of her own that shifted the Earth's magnetic poles. Forsyth takes the mockery and orders her to do worse. Forsyth orders Bertha to push tectonic plates around. New volcanic islands rise in the Indian Ocean. Earthquakes ripple. The Sanctuary Network leadership panics. Wexford, a senior network official, gives Magnus 72 hours to fix it before he relieves her of command. Will, on the streets of Mumbai, finally figures out what Kaylee has been trying to tell him. He has to dance for her. He has to express, through movement, the answer to her question. He dances in the street while imaginary Bollywood backup dancers join him in the vision. Kaylee, in the vision, agrees to leave humanity alone. She wants to be left in peace. Wexford, behind Magnus's back, orders the Sanctuary Network's underwater fleet to deploy charges at Bertha's containment. The charges fire. Bertha takes the hit. Bertha rises to the surface in pain and rage. Bertha emits a single shockwave that triggers a tsunami across the entire Indian Ocean. Wexford relieves Magnus of command of the Sanctuary Network. Magnus walks out of her own building. The audience is left in the second season finale with two questions. Where is Druid? And who exactly is going to run the Sanctuary now? Season 3 answers neither of them in the order anyone expected. The tidal wave is in the air. Henry wakes up on the deck of the Sanctuary Network's ship with his head bleeding. Magnus is in the helicopter trying to lure Big Bertha back into the deep. Wexford is in the bridge ordering the missile crew to fire. Kate is in the Mumbai Sanctuary trying to keep Will alive. The wave is 20 minutes out from the coast. Magnus's helicopter takes a magnetic pulse from Bertha and crashes into the ocean. Forsyth's men fish her out of the water. The mockery inside Forsyth is dead. The connection to Bertha is broken. The only person left on the planet who can reach Kali is Will Zimmerman. The team in Mumbai induces cardiac arrest in Will and lets him die for 90 seconds. Will, in the spirit realm, finds Kali and a council of other hyperspecies abnormal avatars in a glowing temple. He pleads for her help. The council disappears. Will wakes up. 3 land-based earthquakes ripple out from the coast and produce 3 counterwaves that neutralize the original tsunami. Coastal Pakistan and India are saved. Bertha drops back into the deep. Magnus regains command of the Sanctuary Network the moment the wave dies. Wexford is removed. Forsyth sacrifices his ship to keep the team between Wexford's missiles and Bertha. Magnus, with a bazooka, shoots out Wexford's targeting systems. The crew of the Sanctuary ship refuses to defend Wexford any further. The day ends with Callie alive, Wexford broken, the team intact, and Will sitting in the infirmary, unable to remember any of what he saw on the other side. Will starts having visions of pale, hairless humanoids with sharp teeth attacking him in the dark. Magnus and the team think he is having post-traumatic flashbacks from the spirit realm. Then, the pale humanoids show up in the Sanctuary's infirmary while Bigfoot is watching over a sedated Will, knock Bigfoot out, and stick a memory extraction device on the back of Will's head. The team catches them. The humanoids self-combust before they can be interrogated. The team uses the device on Will to recover what was taken. The recovered memory is the council in the temple. The council is not made of strangers. One of the hooded figures steps forward in the playback and is revealed to be Gregory Magnus. Helen Magnus's father, who walked off into the world at the end of Season 1, Episode 10, is alive. He is in the Hollow Earth. He grabs Will's wrist in the memory and burns the number numbers 26 and 34 into Will's skin along with a small symbol. Magnus pulls a crystal paperweight her father gave her on her 26th birthday and a rare first edition book on Michelangelo he gave her on her 34th. She places the paperweight on a page of the book bearing the same symbol. The room fills with a holographic city, a miniature, fully animated, steampunk-tinged metropolis the size of the library, with flying zeppelins and trains. The city is real. The city is somewhere. The team has to find it. A small, abnormal egg in a small-town bank deposit box hatches before the team can retrieve it. The egg becomes a creature called a Pheropodus, which gestates inside a human host and bursts out a few hours later, killing the host. The host is somewhere in the bank lobby. Magnus, Will, and Kate, with no other plan, stage a bank robbery to keep everyone inside while Magnus narrows down which hostage is the host. The whole episode is a bottle play. Will and Kate negotiate with hostage takers who are, in fact, them. Magnus performs surgery on a bank teller in a back office. The creature is extracted. The hostages go home thinking they were robbed by a polite British woman with a fake American accent. Tesla, in the Colombian Highlands, sends an SOS by 1940s autotype. Magnus, Will, and Henry teleport in to find him pinned by a swarm of giant centipede creatures that turn out to be Cabal experiments mutated by escaped source blood from a buried lab. In the B-plot, Bigfoot's oldest human friend, a Catholic priest in Old City named Father Nathaniel Jensen, is murdered. Bigfoot tracks the killer down to a beat cop named Detective Stanley O'Farrell. O'Farrell drops dead of a brain aneurysm before he can be questioned. Magnus reads the autopsy and tells Bigfoot someone forced the policeman's hand. Bigfoot has no idea who. On a rooftop afterward, a young priest named Father Clark approaches Bigfoot and tells him gently that Father Jensen had spoken to him a great deal about the abnormals of Old City. Father Clark is not a priest. Father Clark removes his collar and walks off into the dark with a smile. The audience now has the season's secret villain on screen for 30 seconds, and the audience does not yet know his name. A biohazard alarm forces the sanctuary to evacuate sensitive abnormals. Will and Kate transport, among other items, the cracked containment case holding the swarm of insects that became Walter Bruce's superhero suit 2 seasons ago. Mercenaries hit the van. The case cracks. The swarm bonds to Kate. The mercenaries take Kate to a private lab run by a man named Virgil St. Pierre. The extraction process scrambles Kate's personality and lets her loose in the city. The sanctuary tracks her down. Walter is brought back in to receive the suit. The suit refuses Walter. Walter has changed. Walter is a guy producing his own movie now, and the swarm can feel it. Virgil's people pull a kill order on Kate to take her out of the equation. Walter, in the last act, throws himself into the line of fire and takes a round meant for her. The swarm transfers from Kate to Walter while Walter is dying. Walter stands up wearing the suit again. Walter, finally serious about it, drops every one of Virgil's shooters before they can get a second shot off. Kate is restored. The adjuster is back. A werewolf killing in northern England. Henry and Will, on a road trip, find a private psychiatric institute called Oldham, run by a doctor named Lillian Myers, where every resident is a HAP. Lillian's niece Erica Myers is a HAP herself, but has never transformed. Lillian has been medicating her residents into compliance and using their lichenside as a security force. Henry transforms in front of Erica to show her what their kind can be. They escape Oldham together. Erica kisses Henry on the way out. The sanctuary takes the residents in. In a B-plot, Magnus and Tesla figure out that the holographic city in the library is, in fact, not a city on another planet. It is a map. The map is of the inside of the Earth. The map is of the network of tunnels in the hollow Earth. Ellen Magnus's father, the audience now confirms, is somewhere down there. A distress call from an unidentified abnormal lures Magnus into an abandoned downtown warehouse. Will and Kate are in the lobby. Their scanners do not work. Magnus tells them to stay back. Magnus walks into the building alone. The doors seal behind her. The bullet-resistant glass on every exterior door of the warehouse refuses to shatter. The fire exits are welded. Magnus realizes, in a corridor, that she is the abnormal the distress call was meant for. A figure in a hooded biohazard suit teleports across the room and kicks her into a wall. Magnus rolls to her feet with a broken finger. The figure teleports again and kicks her in the ribs. Magnus reaches for a piece of pipe and uses it as a tonfa. The fight, a single-set martial arts sequence between Helen Magnus and an unknown opponent, runs for 6 in-episode minutes. Magnus, mid-fight, sees a leaf falling outside one of the windows. The leaf is hanging in the air, frozen, mid-fall. The whole warehouse is inside a time bubble. Time outside the building, on Will and Kate's clock, has stopped. Time inside, where Magnus is currently bleeding from a knuckle, is moving normally. The figure attacking her is doing it inside a private pocket of the universe nobody outside can see. Magnus, with the makeshift baton, eventually catches the figure between two pipes and rips his hood off. The man underneath the hood is Adam Worth. Adam Worth was a 6th Oxford classmate. He tried to join the Five at the same lab in 1885. The Five rejected him by vote. Magnus delivered the news to him in person. He never quite recovered. Adam Worth, the audience now learns, also has multiple personalities. The calm side of him is rational, polite, and almost tender. The angry side of him is, in his own words, what Robert Louis Stevenson borrowed for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He claims he never got royalties. He is bitter about it. Adam Worth has been dead for over 100 years. Magnus shot him off a cliff at the personal request of King Edward VII in the 1890s after he tried to murder London with cyanide. She saw the body fall into the river. She has carried that killing as one of the cleanest pieces of dirty work in her life ever since. The body, it turns out, did not die. The two of them fight through the warehouse. The bubble is poisoned with low-grade gamma radiation as a security measure. Both of them are absorbing dose every minute. Both of them are now, in the back half of the episode, on a slow death sentence neither of them noticed. Magnus eventually traps Worth in his own bubble's collapse mechanism, drags him to the front door, and gets both of them outside seconds before the bubble self-destructs. The leaves outside, on the sidewalk, finish falling. Will and Kate, who have been standing in the same exterior position for 3 hours of in-bubble time and 12 seconds of street time, do not understand what just happened. The team has Worth in custody. Magnus has, in private, 6 weeks of life left. The audience now has the season's villain on the table and the season's countdown ticking. The next 4 episodes are going to make Magnus, Will, the Sanctuary, and the entire show choose what to do about both. Magnus tells Will, finally, the rest of the Five's origin. The flashbacks span 30 years. Adam Worth was a brilliant Oxford classmate who never stopped asking to be let in. The Five discussed it in private. The Five decided against him. Magnus was the one who delivered the news in person. Worth went home that night and never quite forgave any of them. Years later, Worth came to the Five for help. His daughter Imogene was dying of leukemia. He begged Magnus and Watson to apply 5th-grade research to her. They told him there was nothing they could do. He left their lab in a rage. Imogene died. Decades after that, Worth resurfaced as the leader of a small London poison cult and tried to murder the entire population of the city by piping cyanide into the gas mains under the streets. The Five caught him in the back half of the operation. King Edward VII personally ordered the Five to put him down. The agreement, in writing, was that if the Five did the killing, His Majesty's government would pardon Druitt for his Whitechapel killings, pardon Griffin for various 19th century crimes nobody at the time had a name for, and quietly fund the Sanctuary project for the rest of Magnus's life. The Five accepted the terms. The Five hunted Worth to a cliff in a mining region. Magnus was the one with the rifle. Magnus shot him in the shoulder to keep him from triggering his Hyde personality and stop the fight long enough to talk. He fell off the cliff into a river below and was assumed dead. He was not dead. Druitt was hunting Worth in parallel and found him in the water that night. Worth, dying, offered Druitt a deal. Druitt could let him live in exchange for a list of safe houses Worth had built across Europe over the decades. Druitt, who was tired of teleporting through hotels with bad mattresses, accepted. Worth used those safe houses to disappear for the next 110 years. Magnus did not know any of this until she pulled a drugged Druitt out of Phnom Penh, brought him back to the old city sanctuary, and sat across from him as he finally told her the whole story. Worth is, in the present-day sanctuary, dying of acute radiation poisoning from the time bubble. So is Magnus. Both have weeks. The only cure is somewhere in the Hollow Earth, in a city neither of them has ever physically been. Tesla, in the back half of the episode, walks into Magnus's study with a copy of the Sanctuary Charter. Article 14, subsection 3. If the head of house is physically or psychologically compromised, command of the Sanctuary network transfers to the second in command. The second in command is Will Zimmerman. Tesla does not look like he enjoys delivering this. Druitt, sitting in the corner of the study, looks like he understands. Magnus, in the chair behind her desk, looks like she has been carrying her own death sentence for too long. Will, who has been in the building for 3 years, takes operational control of the Sanctuary network from Helen Magnus. Magnus does not enjoy this. Magnus also does not, in the closing beat, refuse it. A young FBI agent named Abby Corrigan walks up to the Sanctuary front gate with a badge and a polite request to talk to Will Zimmerman. Will, Abby tells him, trained with her at Quantico years ago. Will, Abby's expression confirms, does not remember her at all. He fakes it for an hour. She lets him. Abby is investigating the death of the police officer who killed Bigfoot's friend, Father Jensen. Officer O'Farrell died of a brain aneurysm 72 hours after the murder. The autopsy report Abby has does not match the autopsy report the sanctuary received. Someone replaced the file. In a parallel storyline, Henry, exposed to a small, abnormal bug called a cipher beetle, becomes briefly aggressive enough to attack Kate before being stunned. The bug is being used as a chemical weapon by a local vigilante hunting people who help abnormals. The vigilante is the same Father Clark who showed up at Bigfoot's parish in episode 4. He has been killing pro-abnormal old city citizens one at a time and framing the kills as natural causes. Father Clark releases hundreds of cipher beetles at the midnight vigil for Father Jensen. Bigfoot fights through them. Bigfoot corners Clark in an alley. Clark shoots Bigfoot. Bigfoot, refusing to fall, charges Clark and chokes him to death with his bare hands. Bigfoot has never killed anyone before. Bigfoot, lying on the alley floor afterward, weeps. Abby Corrigan, who has just seen Bigfoot for the first time, kneels next to him in the alley and tells him he is going to be fine. Will finally lets himself like her. The map points to Tibet. The team has one source blood shield that Tesla built. The shield is calibrated for Magnus. Tesla and Druid have to stay on the surface. Adam Worth, who knows the city, is forbidden to come. Magnus, Will, Henry, and Kate enter the gate. The shield works at the door. The gate seals. A rockfall splits the team. Magnus and Will are pinned on one side of the collapse. Henry and Kate are pinned on the other. Magnus and Will are attacked by a basilisk, a Praxian perimeter guardian the size of a subway train. They are saved at the last moment by hooded figures who turn out to be Praxian patrols. Both pairs of the team are taken into custody at separate gates of the city. On the surface, Tesla and Druid are watching the clock. Magnus has missed her check-in. Tesla decides to use Adam Worth as a beacon. Druid teleports both of them in. Worth, who has been planning this for 100 years, walks Druid directly into a Praxian containment cell and walks away free. Druid is locked down. Magnus, Will, Henry, and Kate are marched into the heart of Praxis. The Praxian leader, Rana Seneschal, hears that they have violated Praxian sovereignty and orders their immediate execution. The team is put to the sword. Cut to black. Magnus wakes up. She is not dead. The Praxian execution chamber from the previous episode was a suspended animation sentence, not a death sentence. Praxis does not kill prisoners outright. Praxis preserves them. Centuries of war with surface civilizations have made the city's leadership suspicious of corpses they cannot verify. Magnus is taken out of stasis by a tall, regal Praxian named Fallon, who hands her a protein drink to counter the side effects. Magnus is brought before Rana Seneschal, the chief executive of Praxis. The exposition that follows is the show's most ambitious world-building sequence and the closest Sanctuary ever gets to its Stargate inheritance. Praxis is a 1,000-year-old hollow Earth city built by an early human race that fled the surface during the long-ago vampire wars. They went underground and never came back up. They built a civilization underneath the planet without anyone above noticing. Praxis maintains the planet's geothermal and tectonic balance through alliances with hyperspecies abnormals. The hyperspecies are bigger and older than any creature on the surface. Kali is one of them. Big Bertha was Kali. Praxians have been listening to Kali for 10,000 years. Another hyperspecies is a 1,000-year-old fish-like creature named Canaan, the size of a small mountain, who lives in the magma layer just above Earth's mantle and digs new tunnels every century to relieve pressure on the planet's tectonic plates. Canaan has gotten sick. Canaan has stopped digging. Magma is building up under 3 continents. The surface is, in the next 48 hours, going to start erupting. Magnus diagnoses Canaan's symptoms in 12 seconds. Renal failure caused by a parasite that has lodged in his major artery. The team builds a treatment. Magnus and Rana rappel down a magma chamber in suspended heat-shielding gear, balance themselves on Canaan's pectoral fin, and operate on his back with a laser cutter while the chamber heats up around them. The parasite is removed. The wound is cauterized. Canaan rolls slightly. Magnus and Rana ride his fin to safety. Helen Magnus's father shows up during the descent. Gregory Magnus, the man who walked off the show in Season 1, Episode 10, promising he would not be far, has been a Praxian citizen for years. He has been advising Rana. He was the one who whispered to Kali during the Season 2 finale to save the Pakistani coast from Big Bertha Bertha's tsunami. He hugs his daughter. He kisses her forehead. He stays at her side for the next hour of screen time, and the audience finally gets to see Helen Magnus and her father in the same shot. Adam Worth, meanwhile, has been released from a Praxian prison cell by Fallon, the chief of staff, who has been working with him in secret for weeks. Fallon's plan is to use Worth's antimatter expertise to install a containment shield over Praxis that would protect the city from magma overflow witut needing Canaan. Fallon's secondary plan, which Worth never agreed to, is to depose Rana and run the city herself. Worth, who has been planning his own move for over 100 years, walks into the Praxian vault and steals the Kellerem device, a ban-listed antimatter component the Praxian government has been keeping locked behind biometric security since the city was founded. The device is, in the wrong hands, a city-leveling weapon. The device, in Worth's hands, is the missing component for his time machine. Will and Henry track him to a transport tube. Magnus arrives. Magnus shoots Worth twice in the chest. Worth, dying, crawls into the transport pod and seals the door before the team can stop him. The pod descends through the Praxian transport network to the lower levels of the city. The pod door opens at the bottom level. Druid is in the cell at the bottom. He is bleeding. He is conscious. He has been waiting since Tesla used him as a beacon in episode 10 and dropped him into a Praxian containment field. Druid sees Worth in the pod door. Druid smiles. The pod returns to the upper city 10 minutes later. The pod is empty of Adam Worth. The Kellerem device is sitting on the floor of the pod next to a single message written on the back wall in fresh blood. All debts paid in full. John. Druid has just executed Adam Worth in payment for what he and Magnus and Watson did to Worth's daughter on a London cliff 110 years ago. The team chooses, in the moment, to believe him. The audience, 10 episodes from the season finale, chooses to wait. Gregory Magnus stays in Praxis as humanity's ambassador. He kisses his daughter goodbye one more time. He promises her he will be in contact. Magnus, who has been looking for her father since the 1880s, watches him walk back into a city she is about to leave. Magnus and the team return to the surface. The walking stick Gregory has been carrying for a century stays in his quarters in Praxis. The audience does not yet know that the walking stick will be the only thing left of him after Season 3's finale. Magnus wakes up. She is not dead. The Praxian execution chamber from the previous episode was a suspended animation sentence, not a death sentence. Praxis does not kill prisoners outright. Praxis preserves them. Centuries of war with surface civilizations have made the city's leadership suspicious of corpses they cannot verify. Magnus is taken out of stasis by a tall, regal Praxian named Fallon, who hands her a protein drink to counter the side effects. Magnus is brought before Rana Seneschal, the chief executive of Praxis. The exposition that follows is the show's most ambitious world-building sequence and the closest Sanctuary ever gets to its Stargate inheritance. Praxis is a 1,000-year-old hollow Earth city built by an early human race that fled the surface during the long-ago vampire wars. They went underground and never came back up. They built a civilization underneath the planet without anyone above noticing. Praxis maintains the planet's geothermal and tectonic balance through alliances with hyperspecies abnormals. The hyperspecies are bigger and older than any creature on the surface. Kali is one of them. Big Bertha was Kali. Praxians have been listening to Kali for 10,000 years. Another hyperspecies is a 1,000-year-old fish-like creature named Canaan, the size of a small mountain, who lives in the magma layer just above Earth's mantle and digs new tunnels every century to relieve pressure on the planet's tectonic plates. Canaan has gotten sick. Canaan has stopped digging. Magma is building up under 3 continents. The surface is, in the next 48 hours, going to start erupting. Magnus diagnoses Canaan's symptoms in 12 seconds. Renal failure caused by a parasite that has lodged in his major artery. The team builds a treatment. Magnus and Rana rappel down a magma chamber in suspended heat-shielding gear, balance themselves on Canaan's pectoral fin, and operate on his back with a laser cutter while the chamber heats up around them. The parasite is removed. The wound is cauterized. Canaan rolls slightly. Magnus and Rana ride his fin to safety. Helen Magnus's father shows up during the descent. Gregory Magnus, the man who walked off the show in Season 1, Episode 10, promising he would not be far, has been a Praxian citizen for years. He has been advising Rana. He was the one who whispered to Kali during the Season 2 finale to save the Pakistani coast from Big Bertha's tsunami. He hugs his daughter. He kisses her forehead. He stays at her side for the next hour of screen time, and the audience finally gets to see Helen Magnus and her father in the same shot. Adam Worth, meanwhile, has been released from a Praxian prison cell by Fallon, the chief of staff, who has been working with him in secret for weeks. Fallon's plan is to use Worth's antimatter expertise to install a containment shield over Praxis that would protect the city from magma overflow without needing Canian. Fallon's secondary plan, which Worth never agreed to, is to depose Rana and run the city herself. Worth, who has been planning his own move for over 100 years, walks into the Praxian vault and steals the Kellerem device, a ban-listed antimatter component the Praxian government has been keeping locked behind biometric security since the city was founded. The device is, in the wrong hands, a city-leveling weapon. The device, in Worth's hands, is the missing component for his time machine. Will and Henry track him to a transport tube. Magnus arrives. Magnus shoots Worth twice in the chest. Worth, dying, crawls into the transport pod and seals the door before the team can stop him. The pod descends through the Praxian transport network to the lower levels of the city. The pod door opens at the bottom level. Druid is in the cell at the bottom. He is bleeding. He is conscious. He has been waiting since Tesla used him as a beacon in episode 10 and dropped him into a Praxian containment field. Druid sees Worth in the pod door. Druid smiles. The pod returns to the upper city 10 minutes later. The pod is empty of Adam Worth. The Kellerem device is sitting on the floor of the pod next to a single message written on the back wall in fresh blood. All debts paid in full. John. Druid has just executed Adam Worth in payment for what he and Magnus and Watson did to Worth's daughter on a London cliff 110 years ago. The team chooses, in the moment, to believe him. The audience, 10 episodes from the season finale, chooses to wait. Gregory Magnus stays in Praxis as humanity's ambassador. He kisses his daughter goodbye one more time. He promises her he will be in contact. Magnus, who has been looking for her father since the 1880s, watches him walk back into a city she is about to leave. Magnus and the team return to the surface. The walking stick Gregory has been carrying for a century stays in his quarters in Praxis. The audience does not yet know that the walking stick will be the only thing left of him after Season 3's finale. A tiny abnormal called a Pinnapex hitches a ride into the sanctuary in another creature's crate. The Pinnapex defends itself by triggering paranoia and aggression in any human or abnormal that touches it. The whole team spends the night attacking each other and erasing each other's short-term memory in waves. By morning, the building is half destroyed. A UN inspector named Lillian Lee is somewhere in the basement and also affected. The team pieces it together by reviewing the security footage. The Pinnapex is recovered. Lee is told she fell on the way in. Lee, eventually, decides to just let it go. Will and Abby Corrigan, on their first proper date, are kidnapped on the street. The kidnappers wanted Helen Magnus, who Will had used as a name on the dinner reservation. They are walked into a back room where a dying man named Horatio Gibbs needs immediate surgery. Will is told to perform it or both of them will be shot. Will, who is not a surgeon, performs it anyway. The patient survives. The patient turns out to be a major slave trader of red list abnormals being smuggled in on a ghost ship. The cure Will administered is destroyed before they can take it back. Will, however, hides a sample. Abby is poisoned. He distracts her from the needle by kissing her. The sanctuary intervention forces arrive at the harbor and arrest Gibbs's whole gang as the ghost ship pulls in. Will and Abby are now, very plainly, a couple. Will picks up a spore from a hollow earth plant-animal hybrid called a Syllabar and starts turning into a reptilian climbing predator. He climbs the walls of his bedroom. He develops sensitivity to ultraviolet. He loses the ability to speak. He becomes aggressive and attacks Kate. The team puts him in a containment cell. Praxis sends back a single response when Henry asks for a cure. Kill subject immediately. The Senate of Praxis has banned communication with the surface. The team almost gives up. A hidden Morse code message buried inside the Praxis transmission, sent by Rana Seneschal in defiance of the Senate, contains one word: Guban. Guban was a Praxian scientist who centuries ago resurrected an extinct mushroom species using preserved DNA. Magnus uses the technique. Will, who escaped containment, is hunted through Old City. Magnus catches him in a warehouse. Magnus injects him in time. Will recovers. Will half jokes that climbing walls might be useful. Magnus walks away on the line. Henry and Erica Myers are dating. Will and Abby are dating. Both couples make reservations at the same Italian restaurant under Helen Magnus's name. The reservations conflict. The team loses an abnormal called a Lepidoptera in the city sewers and has to chase it on the way to dinner. Henry has been thinking about proposing to Erica. Erica has been thinking about going home to London. They sit down together in the closing scene and say it out loud. It will not work. They are not going to give up their lives for each other. They kiss one last time. Erica leaves. Henry, the wolf, is alone again. Will and Abby take the win. Magnus, who somehow somehow got Alfredo's to deliver to her own house, sits down to dinner with a heartbroken Henry across the table from her. Will and Abby walk into the dining room half-dressed and steal pieces of pasta off Magnus's plate. Magnus does not stop them. Henry stares at his fork. In an East African cave, Magnus and Tesla find a Praxian fortress that was overrun by vampires thousands of years ago. Inside the back chamber is a giant crystal sarcophagus. Inside the sarcophagus is the warrior queen of the vampires. Her name is Athena. Tesla takes a fatal hit from an automated weapon on the way in. Magnus, to keep him alive, cracks the queen's coffin and injects Tesla with a drop of her blood. Tesla becomes a vampire again on the spot. Athena wakes up. Athena is fully sentient, multilingual after one taste of Tesla's blood, and convinced that she is going to repopulate the Earth from her sleeping court of vampire warriors a few rooms away. Magnus offers her a deal. Athena can have the Hollow Earth as a new domain in exchange for leaving the surface alone. Magnus walks her to the holographic map. The map scans Athena, identifies her as a vampire, and self-destructs the entire fortress. Magnus and Tesla, now a vampire again, escape with seconds to spare. Tesla, at the end of the episode, discovers he has retained the magnetic powers he developed in Season 2. He is now both a vampire and a magnetic abnormal. His grin gets wider every season. A flashback episode to D-Day, June 6, 1944. Magnus, James Watson, and Nigel Griffin, the Invisible Man, are inside a captured German tank in the French countryside, dressed in stolen Wehrmacht uniforms, trying to drive a captured Tiger past a checkpoint manned by an SS major. The major realizes the accent inside the tank does not match the unit insignia on the side of the tank. The crew of the tank kills the major. Griffin, fully invisible and fully naked because the cloth would give him away, slides down the side of the chassis into the snow, grinning at the cold. Magnus rolls her eyes. The episode does not stop being funny. The mission is to destroy a Nazi weather control machine the German command is using to delay Operation Overlord. The machine is housed inside a Norman bunker. The fire elemental inside the machine is being weaponized to push storm fronts onto the English Channel. Watson is captured by the bunker patrol and dragged below ground. The interrogator turns out to be John Druitt. Druitt, in the uniform of a German major, has been working the Reich from the inside and personally killed Adolf Hitler months ago. The High Command is running the war using a body double from Berlin and does not know. Druitt and Watson fight. They try to teleport out together. The bunker's walls are lodestone. Druitt cannot teleport. Then Colonel Franz Korba walks Magnus in at gunpoint, explains the lodestone problem to all of them, and shoots Druitt in the abdomen on the spot. Druitt is hauled away. Watson is left strapped to the chair. Griffin and Jeanette arrive in the nick of time and free Watson before Korba can finish him. Griffin, meanwhile, runs into an American officer in a hedgerow and recruits him into the assault. They breach the bunker together. Watson reconfigures the weather machine. The fire elemental is driven into the deep earth, where it will sit undisturbed for 65 years until Helen Magnus accidentally finds it again in Season 3, Episode 18. Captain Jack Zimmerman, in a German trench, takes a bullet through the chest. Magnus crouches next to him in the dirt as he dies. She tells his sergeant the day will not be forgotten. The sergeant, in tears, salutes. The episode ends with a dedication card. To everyone who served, thank you for giving us sanctuary. The audience now knows that Will Zimmerman's grandfather and Helen Magnus stood next to each other on the morning of D-Day. The audience does not yet know what the show will do with the connection. The audience finds out 3 seasons later, when Magnus tells Will she has been watching his family since 1944. A French town has gone quiet. Phone lines are dead. Satellite imagery of the area is being censored at the source. Declan calls Magnus from London. He has sent Ravi Ganapathiraman, head of the Mumbai sanctuary, to investigate. Ravi reported a strange tingling sensation crossing the town's outer perimeter and went silent. He has not been seen since. The team flies to Normandy. They break the security perimeter set up by a private military firm called the Lotus Defense Corps. The Lotus officer in charge refuses to give Magnus his name. He warns her, in a tent on the outer edge, that her people are most likely lost forever. Magnus and Will cross into the town through an old French resistance tunnel under a barn. Time is broken inside Carentan. Time on the inside is moving roughly 2,000 times faster than time on the outside. One outside day equals 6 in-dome years. The town has been trapped by the time Magnus and Will arrive for 40 in-dome years, while the rest of the world has lost a single week. Children have grown up. Adults have grown old. Generations have lived and died and been buried inside Carentan, while the calendar outside has not finished a single work week. Ravi is alive. Ravi is also 76 years old. He has built a life. He has a wife named Anna. He has a protege named Josie. He has been working in an old Nazi bunker on the edge of town with a steadily diminishing crew of scientists, trying to crack crack a problem nobody in Carentan has been able to crack on his own. Ravi takes Magnus and Will home. He pours them tea. He tells them calmly that he has been waiting 40 years for somebody to come. The cause of the dilation, Magnus identifies in the bunker's notebooks, is the fire elemental James Watson drove into the deep earth in Season 3, Episode 17. The Norman fire elemental from the SS weather machine, sealed in bedrock by the Allies on D-Day, has resurfaced under Carentan and started bleeding a low-frequency energy field through the stone. The field is dilating local time. The field is also growing. If the team does not collapse it within the next 3 in-dome months, the field will eat northern France first, and then the rest of the planet within 3 weeks of the surface clock. Magnus and Will spend 9 in-dome months building a device that can collapse the field at its origin point. The device works on paper. The device has one cost. Everyone born inside Carentan since the dilation started will cease to exist when the field collapses. They will not have died. They will not be remembered as dead. They will simply, retroactively, never have been born. 40 years of in-dome marriages, in-dome funerals, in-dome births, in-dome holidays, in-dome friendships, in-dome dinners, in-dome arguments, in-dome falling in love will simply unhappen. Ravi knows. Anna knows. Josie, who has spent the last 4 in-dome months falling for Will Zimmerman, who has just told him she wants to have a baby with him after the next dark time ends, also figures it out. Will, who has been doing serviceable masonry and electrical work in a town of strangers for almost a year on his own internal clock, sits down with Josie in a barn and finds he does not have anything to say to her. The townspeople, when the rumor spreads, organize. They try to stop Magnus and Will from deploying the device. Josie shows up at the front of the crowd with a pistol and tells them they have no right to choose who lives and who dies. She raises the gun on Will. Magnus presses the button. Josie pulls the trigger. Ravi jumps in front of Will and takes the bullet. He goes down in the dirt. He smiles up at Magnus. He tells her it is fine. He has had 40 good years he was not supposed to have. Magnus pushes the button. The dilation field collapses around them. Anna, Josie, and the rest of Carentan dissolve back into a world where they were never born. Ravi, who was not dilation native, dies on the field as a man who was always supposed to die. Magnus and Will wake up in a French hospital 7 minutes after they cross the morning's perimeter. They are wearing Lotus blankets. The Lotus officer in command tells them the airstrike has been called off. The radar reading suggests the time dome dropped on its own. Magnus, on the way out of the tent, looks at Will. She tells him they are now the only 2 people on the planet who remember a man named Ravi Ganapathiraman built a life for 40 years in Normandy and married a woman named Anna in a town that no longer ever existed. Will, in the back of the car on the road back to the airfield, does not say anything for the rest of the trip. Magnus and Will wake up in suburban houses across the street from each other. Will is married to Abby. Abby is pregnant. Will is a heart surgeon. Magnus is a painter, estranged from her husband John Druitt, the district attorney who has just convicted the Old City Ripper. Both of them know something is wrong. Both of them start having visions of a laboratory full of glowing tanks. Both of them start painting and drawing the same symbol. Both of them recognize each other in the wrong context. Both of them figure out, in a long dialogue-driven third act over tea in Magnus's living room, that the suburb is a hallucination. The lab is real. They have been bitten by a hollow earth psych worm at the Mexican border. The team brought them to Virgil St. Pierre's facility for treatment. The dream is the antitoxin protocol working. Magnus and Will drive their car off a cliff in the dream. They wake up in the lab. Henry and Kate are next to them. Magnus, climbing out of the tank, asks how long they were under. 3 days. 3 days during which something massive came out of the ground at the southern border of the United States. The season finale. Refugees from Hollow Earth start surfacing across multiple sites, with the largest column appearing within 60 miles of Rapid City, South Dakota. Whole tribes, whole columns, hundreds of abnormals walking out of caves and emerging from sinkholes in broad daylight. The world, until this morning, did not know any of them existed. The world, by lunchtime, has live news coverage on 3 continents. The Lotus Defense Corps under General Villanova deploys a perimeter around the largest column in South Dakota. The UN demands jurisdiction. Lillian Lee, who survived the sanctuary's Pinnapex disaster in episode 12, brokers a partial agreement letting Lotus do the capture and the sanctuary do the housing. The sanctuary sanctuary takes in hundreds of refugees per shift. Among the refugees, in line, hooded, is Fallon, Rana Seneschal's former chief of staff and Adam Worth's former co-conspirator, the Harusan who tried to depose her own city's leader in episode 11. Will recognizes her. Will hauls her into Magnus's study. Fallon tells Magnus that Praxis is gone. Praxis was attacked. Praxis is a smoking ruin. Communication with Rana has been silent for weeks. Communication with Gregory Magnus has been silent for the same amount of time. Druid teleports back into the sanctuary in the next scene. He has been off the show since season 3, episode 10, when he was used as a teleport beacon by Tesla and dropped into a Praxian cell, only resurfacing in the 11th episode in time to write a single line of blood on a transport pod wall and disappear again. He admits finally what happened in the pod. He did not kill Adam Worth. Worth, dying from Magnus's 2 bullets, talked him into a deal. Worth wanted to use the Kellerem device to travel back in time and save his daughter Imogene from the leukemia that killed her in 1898. Druid, who has been carrying his own century and a half of regret since season 1, agreed to help Worth on one condition. Druid got to come along. Druid wanted to go back to 1886 and stop the Five from injecting the source blood. He wanted to live a mortal life with Helen Magnus and never become the Whitechapel Killer. Worth copied the device specifications and disappeared without him. Druid walked out of Praxis empty-handed. Magnus, in the closing scene of the conversation, looks at the man she has been engaged to and hunting for over 120 years and does not know whether to slap him or hold him. She does neither. She tells him to get her to Praxis. Magnus and Druid teleport into the wreckage of the city. Praxis is in ruins. The pyramid towers are collapsed. The streets are empty. There is no sign of Rana Seneschal anywhere in the wreckage. There is no sign of Gregory Magnus anywhere in the wreckage. The only object Magnus finds in the ruins of Rana's private chamber is a silver-handled walking stick. Her father's. He has carried it for over 100 years. He would not have left it behind. Magnus, in the dust, picks up the walking stick. Back in the refugee camp on the surface, Thalo, the hostile Harusan from earlier in the camp, kills Fallon in private and dumps her body where the sanctuary's security cameras will see Will Zimmerman walk away from it. Thalo then triggers a hostage standoff with the Lotus Defense Corps to drag the entire sanctuary network's attention to the camp. It works. The sanctuary network and Lotus Defense Corps both lock onto the camp. Will and Henry, behind the desk, finally figure out the misdirect. Worth has not been here for the camp. Worth has been here for 3 hidden Hollow Earth abnormal armies he has spent the last year quietly assembling under 3 dormant volcanic calderas in Chile, Indonesia, and Russia. Each army is a 1,000-strong invasion force. The hostage situation is a smokescreen. The team scrambles to alert the global authorities. In the ruins of Praxis, Magnus and Druid find Worth's actual time machine. He is hiding behind a rift field. The field is powered by Praxis's geothermal generator. Magnus, in the climax sequence, asks Druid to do the one thing she has been asking him not to do for an entire season. She asks him to use the energy parasite he absorbed back into himself in season 2, episode 11. The parasite that turned him into Jack the Ripper for over 120 years, to short out the rift. Druid agrees. Druid connects himself directly to the Praxian power generator. The energy parasite feeds. The parasite hits a peak the parasite has never been allowed to hit. Worth's rift field collapses. Worth jumps through his own time portal a half-second before it closes. Magnus, watching Druid collapse on the floor of the chamber behind her, runs at the closing portal and dives through it. The portal closes. On the surface, the calderas in Chile, Indonesia, and Russia open simultaneously. 3 Hollow Earth invasion armies march out into broad daylight in 3 time zones. The world's television networks cut to live coverage. The abnormal population of the planet is, for the first time in human history, on the news. Magnus is thrown out of the portal at the other end. The other end is a London cobblestone street. A horse-drawn carriage rattles past her. The newspaper boy on the corner is selling the morning edition with a date in the 1890s printed on it. The gas lamps are lit. Cut to black. The 3rd season finale of Sanctuary just outed every abnormal on the planet, destroyed the underground civilization that had been hiding them for 10,000 years, and stranded its main character 120 years in her own past. Season 4 is going to take some explaining. Helen Magnus is in London in 1898. She is in 21st century clothes. She is unarmed. She is being chased through the gas-lit streets by an Adam Worth she does not recognize. She is hit by a section of falling brick quick, from a wall, a horse-drawn carriage knocks loose. She is found unconscious by a constable. She is processed at Scotland Yard by an inspector named Lestrade. A much younger James Watson, dressed in tailored Victorian wool, walks into the holding cell and looks at her for 15 seconds. He has not yet aged into the half-mechanical Watson of Season 1. He is in his 30s. He is fully ambulatory. He is, on first sight, 10 years younger than the woman in the cell. He pieces it together in 3 sentences. He frees her. Magnus changes clothes in his guest bedroom. She watches Watson destroy every piece of future technology she came in with, including a small Praxian device she did not know was on her. He explains in detail why the timeline cannot be told. The two of them set out to find the Adam Worth from the present she chased. Worth is here. Worth is sitting at his daughter Imogene's bedside in a Hampstead Heath townhouse, treating her leukemia with future tense medicine he carried through the portal in his coat. Imogene wakes up. Imogene is alive. The version of history where she dies in 1898 is, in real time, slipping out of the timeline. Magnus and Watson arrive at the Worth household. Imogene has been moved. Worth has taken her on the run. In the same 42 minutes, Magnus has to do something she had not anticipated. She has to walk through her own past life on foot. Her younger self is in the same building. Her younger self is in her early 30s, fully aging, in a long dress, working her first patient cases at the original sanctuary. Her younger self is also engaged to John Druitt. Future Magnus watches her past self walk into a study where Druitt is waiting. Past Magnus, in this exact week of her life, has just connected the dots. She suspects her fiancé of being the Whitechapel killer. Future Magnus stands in the corridor and watches her past self confront Druitt with a straight razor in her hand. Druitt, in the room, takes the razor from her and, instead of killing her, slams it into the wall behind her head and teleports away. Past Magnus, alone, in tears, walks out of the room. She does not see her own future self in the corridor. Future Magnus, in the doorway, looks at the razor in the wall and does not interfere. Future Magnus, on a separate night, meets Druitt herself in the rain in the street. He attacks her. She fights him off in a way her past self never could have. She tells him to stay away from her. He looks at her in the wet gaslight, like a man looking at a stranger. He teleports away. Magnus tracks Adam Worth through London. She finds him with Imogene. She tries to convince Imogene that her father is going to do unforgivable things to the world if Imogene is allowed to live in this timeline. Imogene, 8 years old, in a small white nightgown, listens. Worth, returning to find Magnus in his daughter's bedroom, attacks her with a Praxian energy weapon. The chase moves into the streets. Future Worth fires at Magnus. Future Worth misses. The shot collapses a wall. The wall lands on Imogene. Imogene dies under the rubble in front of her father for the second time in her life. Future Worth, in shock, drops the weapon. Future Magnus picks it up. Future Magnus vaporizes Adam Worth. The body lands in the cobblestones. Past Magnus and Watson, drawn by the noise, arrive seconds later. Past Magnus kneels next to the dead Imogene. Past Adam, also pulled to the scene, kneels next to her and weeps. Future Magnus stays in the shadows. The next morning, Future Magnus and Watson stand on a rooftop above the city. Watson has done the math overnight. The timeline has been bent, but it is not broken. Past Magnus and past Adam grieve the way they were always supposed to grieve. The Sanctuary Project will be founded the way it was always founded. The Five will form the way they were always going to form. The only loose thread is Future Magnus. Watson considers her problem out loud. Magnus is immortal. Magnus has time. Magnus could simply, in his calculation, hide. She could spend 113 years out of sight, accumulate, prepare, and rejoin her own team in 2011, the moment after she left, with 113 years of accumulated planning behind her. Magnus, watching the London rooftops in the morning sun, agrees to take a vacation. The refugee camp on the surface is a war zone. Lotus Defense Corps is shelling the Hollow Earth abnormal armies marching out of the calderas. The hostage situation is a misdirection. Will Zimmerman, acting head of the Sanctuary Network, is trying to talk a general into not bombing Indonesia. Garrus, the Harusan jeweler from the camp, turns out to be a man trying to do the right thing. Bigfoot brings Garrus into the Sanctuary side. Kate Freelander is back in the camp. Henry hacks the LDC's satellite feeds and stalls the airstrike on the Indonesian column. Fallon, Rana's old chief of staff, is alive and hiding inside the camp the whole time. Will figures out that Fallon's plan is to spark a war on the surface to clear the way for a Hollow Earth takeover. Henry, in his lab, picks up an unauthorized login to the Sanctuary's secure systems. Will and Abby walk into Magnus's bedroom with weapons drawn. Helen Magnus is sitting at her own desk in her own habitat wing, drinking tea, looking at satellite imagery on a tablet. She is calm. She has been gone 3 hours by Will's clock. What happened, Magnus says, is that it has been 113 13 years. The audience, who watched her step into a portal in late 19th century London, now finds out she has been quietly running an alternate identity since the William McKinley administration. She has been alive for the entire 20th century twice over. She has been in hiding longer than any single character on television has ever been in hiding. Will hands her control of the Sanctuary Network back. Fallon is taken prisoner by her own people. Garrus and Kate are openly together. Garrus asks Kate to come back to Hollow Earth with him. Kate, who spent most of her adult life smuggling abnormals before the Sanctuary brought her in, accepts. Druid, the audience does not yet know, is gone from the show. Druid, who held off Worth's energy parasite by absorbing it into himself in the Hollow Earth ruins, is the unspoken cost of the time travel arc. He is name-dropped exactly one more time. He never appears on screen again. A UN Security Council agent named Greg Addison arrives at the Sanctuary with an inspection team and the kind of polite hostility that means he has been sent to hand the Sanctuary over to somebody else. Magnus shows him around. Magnus refuses to put up with him. In a parallel storyline, Erica Myers, Henry's Lycan ex-girlfriend from Season 3, Episode 6, walks back through the front door pregnant with Henry's child. Erica cannot transform. Erica is also, because of pregnancy hormones cross-reacting with her old Oldham Institute medication, emotionally erratic. She partially transforms in front of Addison and slams him into a wall. Magnus, who has been quietly working on this for 113 years in exile, finally drops the play. The UN inspection is, in fact, a hostile takeover. The Sanctuary's funds are in danger of being frozen. Magnus reveals to Will and Henry, in private, that her 113 years off the grid were spent building exactly the financial cover she would need for this exact moment. The Sanctuary Network has hidden assets the UN does not know about, accounts under aliases neither Addison nor anyone in his agency can touch, and a personal banker named Richard Feliz who manages all of it. Magnus throws Addison out of her building. Addison threatens to ruin her. Magnus tells him the next time he comes near them, she will arrange for him to be eaten. The Sanctuary Network is now independent. The Crixorum, the master psychic abnormal who was secretly running the Hollow Earth invasion, is in the basement, sedated. Magnus has been hiding him from the UN since Episode 2. She has not told the team. Magnus, in the same hour, slows Erica's pregnancy chemically so the Lycan baby will be born safely in 2 years instead of 9 months. Henry, the wolf, is going to be a father. Magnus flies to Grande Comore in the Indian Ocean to meet Richard Feliz, her secret financial advisor, and finalize the new arrangement. The airport is held up by a ring of failed government-trained abnormal mercenaries. The hostages, including a research scientist named Charlotte Benoit, are robbed and held at gunpoint. Magnus picks the ring apart from inside. The leader of the ring sets up a fake plane explosion. Charlotte and Magnus eventually trap the last surviving robbers on a runway and burn the runway with a giant flaming X to keep Feliz's plane from landing. The robbers escape with what they think is a deadly virus and explode in midair because the box was actually nitroglycerin. The virus, Charlotte reveals afterward, is in her bloodstream as a dormant carrier, not in any container. Charlotte asks if she can stay at the Sanctuary for a couple of days. Magnus initially declines. Charlotte kisses her. Magnus changes her mind. Sanctuary, in Episode 4 of its final season, gives the audience a final season's worth of permission to read Magnus the way Magnus has been written for 3 years. The hour is also, very quietly, the last carefree minute the team gets together. In a B-plot, Will Zimmerman and Henry chase a stenopel habilis through the old city sewers and run into Abby Corrigan with a new partner. Abby has been promoted. The FBI has formed an abnormal investigation unit. Will accidentally tells her he loves her. Abby, in the same scene, tells him she heard. A new agency arrives on Sanctuary's doorstep. The Department of Homeland Security has formed a unit called the Specified Counterinsurgency Unit, SCIU, authority to capture, contain, study, and weaponize abnormals on United States soil. Under cover of the abnormal versus human war, the Hollow Earth crisis kicked off. The Sanctuary team is hunting a young humanoid abnormal in an old city alley. They stun him. A SCIU strike team in tactical gear arrives in unmarked vans within 90 seconds, led by a Colonel Bosch, and orders them to transfer the abnormal into federal custody. Magnus protests. Bosch tells her she should call the president if she has a complaint. The vans roll out with the abnormal in the back. Henry, on his laptop, has already tagged one of the vans with a tracking bug. The bug pings a route. The route ends at Area 51. Magnus and Henry fly out, infiltrate the facility, and break into the inner laboratory complex. Magnus, who was a US government contractor in 2 world wars, knows the building well enough to bypass 3 checkpoints. They find a director's office at the heart of the lab. Magnus walks in expecting a bureaucrat. The director is Nikola Tesla. Tesla, in a tailored suit, smiles at her like a man who has been waiting for her to figure it out and is mildly disappointed it took her this long. Tesla, he tells her in his office, took the SCIU job for 2 reasons. First, the money. SCIU is, in private contracting terms, the best-paying gig of his entire post-Edison life. Second, his actual mission. He has been using SCIU funding to build a wireless rift energy generator. The generator is something he has been sketching since the 1890s. The generator, on paper, would create a stable point of access to a parallel dimension for free electricity. The first activation pulls something through the rift it should not have pulled. The creature is humanoid. The creature is glowing. The creature has long, tendril-like appendages that cannot be hit by conventional weapons. The creature drags an SCIU guard away into the dark and vanishes. Tesla, who has been calling the device a wireless energy proof of concept, is forced to cooperate with Magnus to shut it down. Henry, mid-attempt, is grabbed by the creature and dragged through the rift into the parallel dimension. Tesla, in a piece of the season's most over-the-top vampire magnetic plotting, uses his own magnetic abilities to teleport into the creature's home dimension by riding the rift's polarity. He extracts Henry from the creature's nest. He brings him back through. Magnus collapses the field. The creature is locked out of the human side of the rift forever. The facility, by Magnus's estimate, would have lost containment within 20 minutes. Tesla saved Henry's life and the lives of every scientist on the floor. He also, very pointedly, did not save them out of any remaining loyalty to the sanctuary. In the closing scene, Tesla walks Henry to the exit and slips a small electronic tablet into his pocket. The tablet, when Henry plugs it into Magnus's lab the next morning, contains the complete list of every abnormal currently in SCIU custody, the full schematic of every project SCIU is working on, and a detailed forecast of every future operation Greg Addison has scheduled for the next 18 months. Tesla has been playing both sides since the day he walked into the SCIU building. He took the job to feed the sanctuary the enemy's playbook. Magnus, in front of a stunned Henry, looks at the tablet for a long beat. She tells Will, in the same scene, to keep an eye on Nikola. She does not specify what kind of eye. She does not specify what for. The audience now has the season's villain, SCIU, Greg Addison, the whole machine. Will Zimmerman is jumped on a Liberian street by car thieves and beaten unconscious. He is taken to a sanctuary safe house with detached retinas. He spends the episode flashing back to his estranged father Jacob, a small-time fraudster Will severed ties with at Quantico after Jacob went to prison. In a parallel B-plot at the sanctuary, Bruno and Sheila Delacour, 2 flying abnormal grifters Magnus has known for decades, show up trying to steal sanctuary stunners under the cover of a fake rescue operation. The story turns out to be partially true. The 2 of them have been buying enslaved abnormal children out of bondage from a red list dealer named Finn Noland. Magnus, after a long sequence of caught lies, leads a sanctuary intervention team to Noland's harbor warehouse and frees the children. Will, his sight restored, returns home. Bigfoot leads Will's father into the room. Jacob brings him a baseball signed by Roy Halladay and looks at him for a long beat. Jacob says only, "Look at you." They embrace. The audience has been told for 3 seasons that Will Zimmerman has nobody. The audience finds out, in episode 6 of the last season, that his father has been waiting at the door for a phone call. A Russian icebreaker frozen in the Barents Sea. A 4-person UK sanctuary recovery team, led by Declan McRae and Henry, boards the ship to retrieve a cargo of frozen hollow earth Migoi, the same shape-shifting Yeti species Magnus and Will fought in the Hindu Kush in Season 1, Episode 5. The crew is dead. The Migoi are loose on the ship. The Migoi can take any form they have ever met. The team starts dying. Magnus and Will arrive on rescue. The team rejoins. The team finds Terry, one of their own, dead. The team locks Henry and his colleague Alistair in a cargo hold to wait it out. The team finds the real Alistair dead in another hold. The Henry the audience has been watching is a Migoi. Then, in the back half of the episode, a second Magnus and a second Will arrive on the ship. The team in the corridor and the team in the door look at each other and have to decide which is which. The newly arrived Magnus suggests they all jump in the salt water. The Migoi, Declan and Henry both think, will hypercharge in salt water. The newly arrived Magnus turns out to be the real one. Saltwater kills McGoy. The other Magnus and the other Will, both McGoy, are exposed. The fake Will is shot by the real one. The team, the next morning, recovers the surviving frozen McGoy and brings them to the sanctuary. Magnus, alone with Henry in the captain's quarters, tells him the McGoy could mimic her so well because Henry knows her so well. The sanctuary is the kind of family that gets weaponized against itself. Will Zimmerman is in the corridor of the sanctuary, on a cell phone call with Abby Corrigan, when the call cuts out mid-sentence. The next thing Will and the rest of the team know, the front gate sensors are tracking a hostile creature on the perimeter. The team gears up. They corner the creature in a corridor inside the building. The creature is humanoid, taller than a person, armored, faster than anything in the show's catalog. It throws Will through a wall. It walks through tranquilizer rounds. Magnus, in the lab, modifies a stun weapon for higher frequency output and brings it down. The team drops a blanket over the body. Underneath the blanket is Abby Corrigan. Abby is taken to a secure isolation room. Will sits at her bedside for 2 days. She does not wake up. The team watches her vitals stabilize without coming back. Declan McRae, visiting from the London sanctuary, walks into Abby's room with a small portable record player and puts on a tune. The radio is playing classical. Abby, on the bed, opens her eyes. She sits up. She looks around. She demands to know what happened to her. The voice she demands it in is, for reasons nobody yet understands, a singing voice. She sounds like a Broadway track. Will instinctively tries to talk to her in regular speech. She does not register him. Declan sings the next question. She answers in song. Magnus diagnoses. In the lab, what has happened? Abby's brain has been rewired by a parasite to receive and produce only musical harmonics. She can hear singing. She cannot hear speech. She is, for the duration of the parasite's presence, locked into a frequency that nobody on the team knows how to operate in for more than 3 minutes. The team learns to sing back to her. The infection is a galvanic blood tick laced with a second hidden organism. A hollow Earth insurgent cell has weaponized for human vector experimentation. The hidden organism is, slowly, rewriting Abby's DNA into something that is no longer her. Each transformation she goes through is the parasite trying to settle into a final form. The armored creature in the corridor was the latest attempt. The transformation is going to keep going. Abby is going to keep being less Abby every day. Magnus, in the library, has a vision of her father humming to her. The vision unlocks a memory of one of his lectures from the 1860s. Gregory Magnus's old theory that abnormal species are formed by DNA actively trying to differentiate itself from the rest of the gene pool. Magnus, with the theory in hand, settles on a procedure. She is going to implant a giant salamander larva into Abby's body. The larva, which is born already aggressive, will become the new attractor for the parasite's mutant genetic activity. The parasite will try to settle into the larva instead of into Abby. The larva, on its way out, will eat through Abby's abdomen. The larva might kill her. Will, when he hears the plan, refuses. Magnus locks Will in a holding cell. Henry and Declan try to keep him quiet. Abby's FBI partner, Gavin Creeley, who has been increasingly worried about both of them, breaks Will out of the cell with a stunner. Will runs to the operating theater. Magnus and Declan are mid-procedure. The larva is bursting through Abby's abdomen. Abby is flatlining. Will, behind the glass, in scrubs, sings a single phrase under his breath into the microphone. The phrase is 2 words: just stay. Abby's pulse comes back. In the recovery room, Abby, with a healed bandage, tells him she remembers what he told her on the roof in season 3. She tells him she considers their relationship disaster-proof now. Will, in a rare moment of self-effacing humor, tells her he can handle disasters as long as he never has to sing through one again. In the closing scene, Will and Magnus, alone in her study, finally have the conversation. Will tells her he is angry that she made the call without him. He tells her he is angry that she has been making calls without him for 3 seasons. He tells her he is angry that he has been her second in command for 2.5 years, and he still does not know what she is actually building. Magnus, sitting across from him, listens. She does not apologize. She tells him, instead, why she chose him 3 seasons ago. She chose him, she tells him, because he was the kind of man who would not back down on something he believed in. She tells him she is proud of him. She does not, in the same scene, tell him that the thing she is has been building is a city under the city. The audience does not get that line until episode 13. A small mechanical spider crawls into Magnus's bed late at night and tries to attach a memory probe to her skull. Magnus catches it. Henry recognizes the device. The spider is a leftover from Adam Worth's Hollow Earth operation a year ago. The audience meets a digital ghost, Tesla, who originally connected the spider to the Sanctuary's mainframe to help Druid teleport into Praxis in Season 3, has accidentally let an organic nanite copy of Adam Worth's personality loose in the system. Magnus and Tesla connect their consciousnesses to the network and meet a digitized Worth in a virtual library that the system has built around him. He is friendly, he is curious. He is also, Magnus and Tesla realize 10 minutes too late, building a fake sanctuary inside the real sanctuary, and they are still inside it. The illusion breaks down. Worth's digital ghost remembers Magnus killed his daughter. Worth attacks. Tesla and Magnus run through the simulation. Will and Henry give them an adrenaline boost in the real world. Tesla, magnetic, sends a Praxian-encoded Morse code distress signal to Henry's monitor. Will joins them in the network. Worth offers Magnus a deal. Pick a body for him. Magnus picks Will. The trap closes. The Will Worth tries to inhabit is also a fake. Magnus has been running a counter-illusion on Worth the whole second half of the episode. Worth is locked into the network alone, raging. The closing scene is Tesla and Magnus sharing a glass of wine. Tesla asks if Magnus would have actually picked him over Will. Magnus asks if he really has to ask. Tesla, for one beat, looks unsure of the answer. The show, which has been running on this particular two-character romance for 126 years of in-universe time, never resolves it. Kate Freelander, who left the surface for Hollow Earth in Season 4, Episode 2, comes back up through Declan's London sanctuary with intelligence. The abnormal insurgency, which Caleb has supposedly been folding into a peace movement since the Hollow Earth War ended, has not folded. The insurgency has gone underground in a literal sense. The insurgency has a new attack planned. The team picks up the trail. Henry tracks a shipment of detonators across the Atlantic. Will and Kate follow it to Lisbon. The trail looks Lisbon-bound, and the Lisbon look turns out to be exactly that. The actual target is in Buenos Aires. The team is being misdirected. Magnus pieces it together. The actual target is the Gran Atlante Hotel outside Buenos Aires, where a high-level convening of abnormal dealers and government weaponizers is consolidating under the SCIU banner. Greg Addison is on the guest list. SCIU is on the guest list. Lotus Defense Corps is on the guest list. Abnormal dealers Hagen Kierstead and Mashita Narumi are on the guest list. Henry, on the SCIU surveillance feed, surfaces a second piece of intelligence at the same time. Bigfoot is on video swearing loyalty to the abnormal insurgency. The footage is clean. The audio is clean. The Bigfoot in the video is, by every voice analyst the team can run it past, the actual Bigfoot they have known for 50 years. The team does not believe it. Magnus does not believe it. Magnus walks down to the lower level holding pen and opens the magnetic shield around the cell of the Crixorum Master Psychic she has been holding since untouchable. The Crixorum has been in a chemical coma for months. Magnus threatens to vent the oxygen from his cell. The Crixorum, in a slowly opening eye, finally speaks. The Crixorum tells her that Bigfoot has been the only person allowed inside the cell on a regular basis since he was captured. The Crixorum has been touching Bigfoot in tiny doses for months. The Crixorum, in a way no sanctuary scanner could detect, has been rewriting Bigfoot's neural pathways one cell at a time. The reprogramming is permanent. Even the Crixorum can no longer reverse it. Bigfoot, the lifelong friend who chauffeured Magnus to the door of Will Zimmerman's apartment in the pilot, the friend who helped raise Ashley inside the sanctuary, has been quietly turned against her without him knowing. Magnus and Kate fly to Buenos Aires. The Gran Atlante is locked down. Greg Addison's security is on the perimeter. Magnus warns Addison again. Addison is unconvinced. He believes his security measures will hold the building. His security does not hold. Bigfoot and 3 of his fellow insurgents are already inside, cloaked by the abilities of one of their own, walking through the elevator shafts to the lobby with detonator vests under their coats. Bigfoot says the insurgency's battle cry one more time before he goes. From below, we rise. Magnus and Kate fight their way into the hotel. They take down 2 insurgents in the lobby. They corner Bigfoot in a corridor. Magnus stands in front of him with her hands open. She tells him she is his oldest friend on the planet. She tells him she found him decades ago, when he had nowhere else to go. She tells him she gave him a name. She tells him she gave him a home. She tells him she gave him a family. She tells him she does not know why he has been kept around for as long as he has, if not for these moments. Bigfoot, behind his eyes, looks at her. Bigfoot briefly hesitates. Bigfoot tries to detonate. Kate Freelander, who Bigfoot trained, who Bigfoot fed, who Bigfoot helped pick up off the street in Season 2, Episode 1 when nobody else trusted her, clubs him from behind with a fire extinguisher. The hotel goes up anyway. The insurgents Magnus and Kate did not catch detonate on the upper floors. 11 people die. Kate is hospitalized. The world's intelligence services, in real time, declare open war on the abnormal population. A week later, in the sanctuary's infirmary, Magnus uses Sally the mermaid's telepathic link to bridge into Bigfoot's mind and reverse what the Crixorum did to him. Sally, who has been in her tank since Season 1, presses a hand against the glass to make contact. Bigfoot, on a gurney, opens his eyes. He is restored. He is also, in his own opinion, no longer the man he used to be. He has watched himself try to detonate a vest in front of the woman who saved him. He cannot stop watching that footage in his own head. He volunteers to walk to a supply pickup the next morning on Magnus's behalf. He walks out the front gate of the sanctuary in the late evening with a small backpack. He does not come home. Bigfoot, the audience finds out in the closing scene of the episode, meets a small group of insurgents 2 blocks from the sanctuary. He looks at them. He gives the greeting. From below we rise. The closing image is the sanctuary's oldest resident, the man who has been there longer than any other character on the show, who has been a fixture of this team since before the team existed, walking willingly into a movement that has been told to murder his oldest friend on Earth. The audience knows by the closing credits that Bigfoot has not been turned. The audience knows that Bigfoot is doing what Bigfoot is doing for a reason. The audience does not yet know why. The audience finds out 3 episodes later when Bigfoot, beaten half to death by Caleb, slides a stolen vial of blue virus into a courier's hand at the sanctuary perimeter and quietly returns to the insurgency's tent to take the punishment that comes with the delivery. ASCIU research team in the Bolivian Andes captures a creature humanity calls Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan god of feathered serpents. The creature Helen Magnus's father went looking for in 1909 with a small expedition and was the only survivor of. Gregory Magnus left strict written instructions that nobody from the sanctuary should ever look for it again. Henry, in the morning briefing, surfaces the SCIU mission location. Magnus reads the coordinates. She closes the file. She tells Will to come with her. Will and Magnus arrive at the cave system. The SCIU team has already brought the dormant Quetzalcoatl to the surface in a containment cradle. Before Magnus and Will can move, an SCIU scientist stuns them from behind with a sonic energy weapon. They wake up in custody. The lead scientist, Dr. Michelle Moran, who has been told the sanctuary is a hostile organization by Greg Addison, refuses to negotiate. She orders her team to widen the cave roof so the helicopter can extract the creature. The blast wakes the Quetzalcoatl up. The creature is the size of a city block. It has feathers. It has a serpent body 20 meters long. It has a tail that hits like a freight car. It tears through the SCIU team in seconds and slings Magnus into a stone wall with one strike of its tail. Will takes a stray round from a panicking SCIU rifleman in the abdomen. The cave roof collapses on top of them. Both of them are pinned in a sealed lower chamber with 1 med kit, 1 survival pack, and 1 spring of fresh water bubbling up out of the stone. Magnus, in the dark, finds a flashlight. Magnus pulls the bullet out of Will. Magnus dresses the wound. They have water from the spring. They have rations. They have, by Magnus's estimate, 48 hours before SCIU rescue teams arrive and either dig them out or write them off as a casualty. Will, in the morning, opens his bandages and watches his wound close in 20 minutes. The water in the spring is the source of the Quetzalcoatl legend. The minerals in the water act on human biology like a temporary suite of upgrades. Magnus can see Will's reflexes triple. Will can recall textbooks he memorized at Quantico 10 years ago verbatim. Will, on a hunch, drinks more water. Will gets sharper. Will gets more. The legends of Quetzalcoatl, giving its priests perfect health and perfect intelligence, turn out to be true. The water comes from a mineral only the creature's habitat produces. The minerals only exist where the creature lives. Will and Magnus push deeper into the cave system looking for a way out. Will, in the 3rd act of the episode, finally says out loud what he has been thinking for 2 seasons. He tells her he is tired of being the mortal. He tells her he is tired of watching her treat every mortal in her life as expendable, including her own daughter. He throws Ashley at her. He throws Watson. He throws himself. Magnus turns. Magnus walks away from him in the dark. Magnus, alone in a side passage, whispers into nothing that she thinks about it every day. She has thought about about it every day since 1885. The Quetzalcoatl attacks. Will and Magnus retreat into a sun-pierced section of the upper cave where the creature cannot follow because of its sensitivity to ultraviolet. Will collapses on the cave floor. The healing water has worn off. The crash is severe. Will, on the stone, asks her to leave him and find a way out alone. Magnus, in the closing scene of the second act, kisses him on the forehead. She tells him to stay alive. She runs back through the entire cave system, the entire way down to the Quetzalcoatl's lair, to the spring, with one bottle. She fills the bottle. In the same beat, kneeling at the edge of the spring, she notices her electronic wristband reacting to the minerals around the spring. She scoops some of the residue into a sample tube. It is not the healing mineral. It is something else, and something her instruments tell her she has not seen before in the surface world. The cave is, for whatever reason, near the place she has been quietly building. She takes a small mineral sample with her. She runs the bottle back up to Will. She gets the bottle into him. She gets him out of the cave. In the infirmary, 3 days later, Will, sitting up in bed, finally asks her the question he has been holding since Season 1, Episode 1. Why him? Why was he, of all the forensic psychiatrists in Old City, the one she walked up to in the rain? Magnus, in a chair next to his bed, tells him the answer. She tells him she paid for his college education through one of the Bancroft trusts. She tells him she has been watching him for a long time. She tells him she did not force any of his choices. She took her chances with him, and he became the man she hoped he would be. Will sits with the answer. Magnus has been waiting for the moment when Will Zimmerman would be ready to walk through the front door of her sanctuary. Will sits up in his hospital bed. He does not say anything. He looks at her. Magnus, who has just told a man the actual reason he has the life he has, for the first time, sits in the chair and lets the moment hold. The series finale, Part 1. Richard Felice, the secret financial advisor Magnus has been hiding the sanctuary's funds with for over a century, walks through the front gate of the sanctuary in a tailored suit and tells Magnus, with regret, that he is quitting. He cannot, as a banker with public obligations and a career to protect, continue to be the front man for what she is preparing to do. Magnus accepts his resignation. She thanks him for the years he has been her cover. She asks him for one last favor. The favor is a single coded phrase. Maneuver Delta Epsilon. Felice looks at her. He nods. He walks out the front gate. The audience does not yet know what Maneuver Delta Epsilon is. The audience will find out in the next episode that it is a coordinated 12-minute shutdown of every major exchange in Western finance. The shutdown is, by design, exactly long enough for Magnus to liquidate every shell company, every holding, every front, and every quiet account she has built across the past 113 years and convert all of it into a single line item nobody can trace. Will Zimmerman, on a sidewalk in Old City, is jumped by a small group of human attackers ambushing a Hollow Earth refugee in a coat. He is overmatched. The fight is over in 8 seconds when a tall, heavy-set abnormal in a dark hoodie walks across the street and puts the attackers down with 2 punches. The abnormal extends a hand. The abnormal introduces himself as Caleb. Caleb is the most wanted abnormal on the planet. Caleb has been the silent leader of the surface insurgency since the calderas opened. Will recognizes the name. Will is now in conversation with the man every government agency on Earth is trying to find. Caleb wants peace. Caleb tells Will to tell Magnus that he wants to settle the Hollow Earth refugees in Old City's 5th Ward, that he wants to negotiate, that he wants a town. Will brings the message home. Magnus agrees to help him. Greg Addison, head of SCIU, reactivates Will Zimmerman as a federal agent without asking. Addison orders Will to bring Magnus in. Will refuses, then agrees in private after Magnus instructs him to. Magnus wants Will inside SCIU. Will is now, for the rest of the show, the Sanctuary's mole inside Addison's operation. Magnus walks the Hollow Earth refugees into the 5th Ward in batches. She closes the real estate deal on the homeland. She cuts contact with Will publicly. Will, in front of Addison's bullpen, promises to bring her in. Will, with the Old City Police Department under his nominal command, lays an ambush for Magnus in the street. Magnus gets away on his motorcycle. In the SCIU command center, Addison tells Will why none of this is going to matter. Bringing all the abnormals into one place was the goal the entire time. SCIU has now sealed the 5th Ward off behind a massive military perimeter, ringed in Tesla's repurposed technology. The cover story for the public is a toxic chemical spill in the area. The 5th Ward is, in functional terms, a containment camp. Will sits at his SCIU desk and watches the perimeter come up on the security feed. He cannot, in front of Addison, react. Then, on every screen in the world, Helen Magnus appears on a live interview being broadcast from a remote location. She is sitting across from a reporter. She is calm. She has clearly been planning this segment for months. She speaks directly into the camera. She tells the world that the Fifth Ward is full of strange beings who have been living among us for hundreds of years. She tells them she calls them abnormals. She tells the world that the world knows them as monsters. She tells the world that they very much exist. Then she gives the camera the longest pause Sanctuary has ever filmed. The world, for the first time since 1850, knows. Cut to credits. The audience now has the second to last hour of the show ready to walk into the next. The series finale, Part 2. Magnus's announcement broadcast loops on every channel. The world's governments scramble. Greg Addison sits in the SCIU command center trying to keep the lid on a situation that no longer has a lid. He tries to recruit Will. Will refuses. Magnus calls Will. On a private line nobody at the agency can intercept and tells him that Addison's containment of the Fifth Ward is the first move, not the last move. He has to stay in place. He has to look like he is helping. Magnus tells Henry, in a quiet conversation in her study, what is actually about to happen. She walked the streets of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943, she tells him. She watched the Nazi soldiers come through and wall it in. She knows what comes next. The next step, in every history book she has ever read, is extermination. Henry listens. He does not argue. He has been with her since he was a frightened kid she took in. Tesla, in his lab, figures out the same thing from the technical side. The grid SCIU has built around the Fifth Ward is not a fence. The grid is the prototype of an electrified containment field. Tesla's wireless energy concept, the same one he tried to commercialize in Season 4, Episode 5, has been weaponized. One switch in Addison's hands will fry every abnormal inside the Fifth Ward. Tesla, in front of Henry, finally lets himself feel guilty. Caleb, inside the Fifth Ward, walks into a tent and shows Bigfoot a small vial of bright blue liquid. He tells Bigfoot the liquid is going to flip the species hierarchy of the planet. Caleb's vision is not coexistence. Caleb's vision is replacement. When all of this is done, Caleb says, abnormals will be in charge of the surface, and humans will worship abnormals as gods. Bigfoot looks at the vial. Bigfoot looks at Caleb. Bigfoot is no longer brainwashed. Bigfoot was restored by Magnus's telepathic bond with Sally 3 episodes ago. Bigfoot has been faking his return to the insurgency the entire back half of the season. Bigfoot has been her oldest friend on the planet. Bigfoot in this scene has been waiting for Caleb to hand him the actual weapon. Bigfoot takes the vial. Bigfoot walks out of the tent. Bigfoot delivers the vial to a courier the team has stationed near the perimeter. The vial reaches the sanctuary by the next afternoon. Will and Abby Corrigan, working a parallel investigation, finally trace Magnus's 113-year exile. The alias she used was Helen Bancroft. Bancroft was her mother's maiden name. She made her way to New York and helped Nikola Tesla finance Wardenclyffe Tower. She made contact with Albert Einstein. She made contact with Buckminster Fuller. She built financial holdings on 5 continents under hundreds of shell companies, with portfolios that doubled, then tripled, then quadrupled through the entire 20th century. The 12-minute Wall Street shutdown Richard Feliz executed in Part 1 was Magnus liquidating every single asset she had built since the day she stepped through the time portal in 1898 and converting all of it into a single funding line for whatever she has been building. Magnus and Tesla, in the lab, run tests on the blue liquid. The liquid is a designer pathogen. The pathogen is a virus engineered to awaken latent abnormal DNA in every human on Earth at the same time. Caleb's plan was never peace. Caleb's plan, from the beginning, was to drop the virus into the global water supply and force evolve the entire human species into abnormals. Half the population, Magnus calculates in real time, would not survive the conversion. The other half would, and they would be Caleb's army. The audience, watching Caleb pace the Fifth Ward, finally has the season's villain in full focus. Caleb finds out the vial is missing. Caleb's people scour the Fifth Ward. Caleb angrily demands that Bigfoot be found. Caleb and his lieutenants come for the sanctuary. Bigfoot, knowing they are coming, locks Kate Freelander behind a Praxian security door and takes the beating in her place. Caleb's men kick Bigfoot to the ground. They rifle butt him. They drag him bleeding to the front gate of the sanctuary and leave him propped against the iron bars as a message. Kate, on a monitor inside the door she cannot open, watches it happen and screams. In the Fifth Ward, Tesla and Henry have hacked Addison's grid and are ready to shut it down for 90 seconds. Will, in the SCIU command center, manipulates Addison into giving him the access codes. The grid drops. Will and Abby walk into the camp at the head of a small evacuation team and start moving the abnormals out through pre-marked tunnels. The abnormals, who are not insurgents, line up and walk. In the main lab of the Old City Sanctuary, Magnus arms herself with Henry's prototype defensive system, kisses Tesla once on the mouth, and locks him out of the lab. Caleb breaks through the lab door. The automated turret guns Magnus has been quietly installing for over a century chew his lieutenants apart. Caleb walks through the gunfire. He has been chewing through automatic weapons fire since the Hollow Earth War. He grabs Magnus by the throat and pins her against the central console. He demands the vial. Magnus, with her free hand, presses a button on the console. A self-destruct timer starts on every screen in the lab. Caleb tells her to stop it. Magnus does not. She looks Caleb in the eye. She gives him the line that has been printed on every social media graphic of this finale ever made. My house, my rules. A robotic arm with a giant industrial drill designed for excavating Hollow Earth artifacts drops out of the ceiling on a track Magnus has clearly built specifically for this purpose. The drill bit punches through Caleb's spine from behind and exits through his chest. Caleb dies on his feet against the console. Magnus pulls Henry's prototype full outer shell safety shield system over her body. The shield wraps her in a field of energy that looks like blown glass. The countdown on the screens hits 0. The Old City Sanctuary blows. The building Helen Magnus has lived in since 1875. The building she designed with her father. The building Ashley was born in. The building that held the basement, the holographic city, the mermaid tank, the fairy in a jar, the fire creature behind glass, the two-faced man, the lower-level holding pens, the safe room, the libraries, the studies, the residential wing, the medical bay, the catacombs, the vampire crystal, the source blood vault, the Praxian map, the Worth nanite, every record of Watson's brace failure, every photograph of Ashley as a child, every letter Druitt sent Magnus from London in the 1880s, every ledger from the Bancroft alias, every piece of equipment Henry built since he was a boy in this house, every weapon Kate stole, every artifact Bigfoot brought up from Hollow Earth, blows itself apart in a series of escalating detonations from the foundations up. The basement is gone. Will and Abby and Kate, on a rooftop 2 blocks away, watch the explosions ripple. The fireball is high enough to be seen from the river. Abby tells Will Magnus is fine. Will, who has known Helen Magnus for exactly 4 seasons, is not so sure. Sometime later, weeks or possibly months, Will follows a trail of small clues only he would notice. The trail leads through an industrial corridor on the Old City waterfront, past an unmarked elevator, down into a cave system the original sanctuary's catacombs used to feed into. The trail ends at a single door with a retinal scanner. Will leans into the scanner. The door opens. Will walks into a fully constructed underground city. Praxian architecture. The same recessed pyramid lighting Helen Magnus saw in Season 3, Episode 10. Habitats for every species the old sanctuary had been holding. A control room the size of an aircraft hangar. Filtration systems. Helen Magnus and Buckminster Fuller would have been arguing about over dinner in 1947. Climate control, water systems, living quarters, lab space, storage for every artifact Magnus has been quietly relocating off the Old City property for over a decade. The whole structure has clearly been 10 years in construction. The structure was built underneath Old City during the era when Magnus was supposedly running a single grand house in the same neighborhood. The structure has been finished, the architecture suggests, for at least 18 months. Helen Magnus is standing in the center of the control room in a long coat. Her hair is down. She is calm in a way she has not been calm in 2 seasons. She has the kind of small smile a woman wears when a plan she has been carrying for 113 years finally lands. She watches Will look at the city she has built. She tells him she has been working on this for almost as long as she has known him. She offers him the same job, in slightly different language, that she offered him in Episode 1. The new underground sanctuary needs a partner. She points out in passing that he just quit the FBI. Will turns in a slow circle and looks at the corridors. The mermaid tank is bigger here. The fairy enclosure is bigger. The fire creature has its own observation deck. There are species in the holding pens he has never seen on Earth. The control room has, on a side desk, a small framed photograph of Ashley. Will turns back to her. He says the line, "I get a raise, right?" She says, deadpan, "Absolutely not. not. She extends her hand to him. She gives him, for the second time in the show's run, the same line she gave him in Season 1, Episode 2, on the day she walked him out of his old life. The line is the show's first line. The line is the show's last line. The line is the show. Shall we begin? Cut to credits. The series ended on that line. Sanctuary did not get a Season 5. The cameras stopped. Sci-Fi declined to renew. The 59 episodes of Sanctuary that aired on basic cable between October of 2008 and December of 2011 are all the show that exists. The fans tried to crowdfund a continuation. A campaign was announced. The campaign did not go all the way. The Stargate audience that had carried Amanda Tapping into Sanctuary in the first place could not by itself fill in the gap. What did not get answered on screen was a long list. Druitt's whereabouts. Druitt's last appearance was on a parapet in the ruins of Praxis, taking the energy parasite back into himself in Season 3, Episode 20. The audience never saw him again. Tesla's status after the Sanctuary blew up, the audience also did not get. Henry and Erica's lichen baby in Magnus's slow pregnancy chemical stasis was not yet born when the credits rolled. Kate Freelander was halfway between the surface and hollow earth and engaged to a Harusan named Garrus. Bigfoot was bleeding out on the front gate of a building that does not exist anymore. Caleb's wider movement. The blue virus Magnus took into her possession. The SCIU machine still operational under Greg Addison. The abnormal versus human war mid-escalation in every newspaper in the world. The reveal of abnormals to the public had just been done in a one-take live television interview by an immortal British scientist on top of a basement that blew up 9 minutes later. Sanctuary handed every one of those threads to the audience and walked off the field. What it left behind was the show. Sanctuary is the only show on basic cable that ran for 4 years on a story whose central question was whether a 159-year-old British scientist who had been Jack the Ripper's fiancé, who had raised her daughter alone in a basement, who had buried James Watson under the floor of a Tibetan labyrinth, who had killed a 6th Oxford classmate on a cliff over a river, who had been on the Titanic, who had stood at the Normandy bunker on D-Day with the grandfather of the man who would replace her, who had performed surgery on a 1,000-year-old fish god while standing on its pectoral fin in a magma chamber, who had been a talker before there were talkers, who had walked off the world for 113 years and rebuilt the entire architecture of the show in secret, could trust anyone. The answer, every time, was that she chose to. The 5 took a vial of vampire blood at Oxford in 1885 because they wanted to evolve. What evolved was their willingness to keep coming back. Druitt came back to her even after he was Jack the Ripper. Watson came back to her even after he was breaking down. Tesla came back to her every season, no matter how many times she shot him. Griffin came back to her by sending his line to her doorstep before he died. Worth, even Worth, came back to her in a poisoned time bubble because he could not stop dragging her into the wrong room. What Sanctuary actually is, under the holographic cities and the nubbins and the giant magma fish and the abnormal cheese-rolling parade of weekly creatures, is a show about the fact that a friendship made on the right night, in the right lab, in the right city, in the right century, will outlive the city, the lab, and the century. Sanctuary will not be the show that taught you that. There are more obvious shows for that lesson. Sanctuary is the show that, with very little money and one Vancouver soundstage and a special effects pipeline duct taped together by hand, will look you in the eye and ask the question anyway. The show was not perfect. The dialogue was sometimes stiff. The CGI was sometimes embarrassing. The Hollow Earth city of Praxis looked, on a good night, like a Photoshop layer. The middle of Season 3 could have been 6 episodes shorter. The Adamworth subplot was, even by Sanctuary's standards, a tangle. The 4th season had to do too much in 13 episodes and did not get the year off it would have needed to do it cleanly. The show was also, frame by frame, in love with its own people. Magnus and Druitt on a parapet in 1885 London. Magnus and Watson in a labyrinth chamber asking each other what infinity equals. Magnus and Tesla raising a glass over the once mighty extinct vampire race. Magnus and Bigfoot in a basement watching old security tapes. Magnus and Henry, the kid she took in. Magnus and Ashley in the Season 1 parking lot fighting over how to deal with transit cops. Magnus and Will at a kitchen counter 4 years later, learning to live next to each other. Will Zimmerman, in Season 1, Episode 2, agreed to stay at the sanctuary on one condition: no more lies. He stayed for 4 seasons. The sanctuary blew up. Magnus was alive. The lies kept coming. He stayed anyway. He stayed because by the time Magnus offered him the new underground sanctuary at the bottom of a retinal scanner door, the question was no longer whether he could trust her. The question was whether the world they were running could survive without both of them in it. The answer, the show told you with a smile and a hand reach, was no. The 4th season finale of Sanctuary is not a perfect finale. It is also not, in the show's own bones, the worst kind of finale. It is the kind of finale every show that has been running on a slow build, every show that has been laying pipe for 4 years on the bet that the audience would still be in the room at the end of episode 59, has the option to write. It picks up, by hand, every single thread the show has been carrying. It kills the villain. It blows up the building. It stages a fake death. It holds a small reunion in a basement nobody else has been told exists. It hands the baton to the next generation lead. It says hello and goodbye in the same line. The line is the same line. Shall we begin? The line is the line because the line means the show. The line is what Helen Magnus said to Will Zimmerman on the morning of episode 2 of season 1, after she told him she was 157 years old, after she admitted Druitt was Ashley's father, after she cracked the door of the basement under the city open for him. The line said then that the show was about to start. The line said in the finale that a different show was about to start. The same partners, a new building, a new century, a new front door. The new front door, the audience never got to walk through because the show was canceled. The new front door, the audience can imagine. The audience, after 59 episodes, has the equipment to imagine it. That is what Sanctuary leaves behind. Not the answers, not the sealed mythology, not the closure of every plot. The audience leaves Sanctuary with the equipment. The equipment is the basement. The basement is the team. Sanctuary, 59 episodes of a sci-fi show created by Damian Kindler, fronted by Amanda Tapping, supported by Robin Dunn, Christopher Heyerdahl, Ryan Robbins, Agam Darshi, Emily Ullerup, Pascal Hutton, and Jonathan Young. Written and shot in Vancouver between 2008 and 2011 on a green screen pipeline that pioneered half the visual effects techniques the Sci-Fi Network used for the next decade, is one of the most underwatched and most shoved into Stargate fandom corner sci-fi shows of the late 90s to early teens era of cable television. It deserves better than a Wikipedia page that ends mid-sentence. It deserves better than a Comic-Con anecdote. It deserves better than the cancellation it took. It deserves the credit for being, in its weakest episode, weirder than most Stargate. It deserves the credit for being, in its strongest hour, the only show on basic cable willing to write a 42-minute argument about whether 2 old friends should let a French town vanish so the planet can survive. It deserves the credit for putting the actual George R.R. Martin in a cameo before Game of Thrones aired, even though Sanctuary did not, and putting Bigfoot in a baseball cap, and putting James Watson in a steel exoskeleton, and putting a vampire in a tailored suit, and putting Helen Magnus on the deck of the Titanic the night it went down with no fanfare and no flashback and no reverence, like the Titanic was just a thing she did once. It deserves the credit for being unembarrassed about its puppetry. It deserves the credit for taking Sasquatch out of the joke aisle and putting him in the chauffeur's seat, and the kitchen, and the operating table, and never once making him a punchline. It deserves the credit for letting Tesla be Tesla. It deserves the credit for letting Druitt be Jack the Ripper. Full stop, no rehabilitation arc, and then letting him fall in love with his own daughter as a separate problem that he never, in the show's run, got to solve. It deserves the credit for letting a 159-year-old British woman cry about her dead 25-year-old daughter on the floor of her own lab. And it deserves the credit for the door scanner at the bottom of episode 59. It deserves the credit for the line. Shall we begin? Twice. Once on the day the show started, and once on the day the show ended. Same words, same partner, different building. The audience earned both readings. The audience also earned the silence after the line. The audience earned the cut to credits. The audience earned the right to know that even though the show was canceled, there was a moment on the floor of an underground city in 2011 when Helen Magnus, 159 years old, in a long coat, finally got to extend her hand to a partner she had been waiting for since 1944, and the partner took it. That moment will not get a sequel. That moment did, in television terms, get a closing. The closing was clean enough. Sanctuary, 59 episodes, is a show that earned the closing it got. The audience that watched all of them knows. The rest of the audience will eventually find out. If you watched all 59 episodes and felt the basement under the city open up under your feet for a beat, click the next video on screen. It is another show the network gave up on too early. It is another team. It is another building. It is another front gate with another woman in it, asking another question, looking for another partner. She will not come to the lobby. She will hand you a card and walk off into the rain. Take the card. Until then, be careful crossing the street. Be careful taking elevators down. Be careful picking up business cards from women in long coats. Be careful especially on the day she finally tells you the truth. The truth, when she gives it to you, will not come with a recap. The truth will come with a question. The question will be whether you stay. If you stay, the building will get bigger. The basement will get deeper. The cargo bay will get fuller. The team will start to feel like the team you were always supposed to be on. If you leave, the building will be there in the morning anyway, with the same lights on, with the same Sasquatch in the foyer, with the same business card on the table. The question is the show. The answer is the team. The team is the basement. The basement is, in the last frame, Helen Magnus and Will Zimmerman ever filmed together, alive. I'm out.